Will it go live? It's live.
Is that a yes?
I believe so.
It looks like it. About 2 theories new beta Zelda 64M. Ah, yes. Looks good.
All right.
We are going.
So
It's gonna go.
Yeah, if you can
tweet
promote
that.
it, and I'll try to do the same. I can't get into Discord, so you'll have to do that.
Sure.
Because my Discord's full screen. We got Matt.
Matt.
He said Danny Boy, and it tried to block
Oh.
it, so I had to approve it. Is Danny
No,
Boy a
don't
bad
approve
word?
that. Don't approve that.
Bananas.
Bananas. We are live now. Ba-doom, boom, boom. And game more. I'm just gonna tweet this out here. The
Yeah, tweet it, and then I'll retweet it.
I almost made a really bad typo, a really inappropriate typo that I'm really glad I noticed. Oh dear.
Alright, so everyone, if you go to Twitter and find the tweet that Daniel just put out and that I retweeted, comment your questions for the Zelda mailbag on that Twitter thread about us going live.
Yes. Oh, Gus wants to know, Jesse, are you still streaming from your floor?
No, I have a technically it's like an end table that you put like a lamp on or something, and I'm just sitting on it because my brother still has both of the chairs that were sent to me.
Horseradish.
Yeah, because I only need one, so I gave one to him, and I kept the 𝐴𝐻𝐿 one because that's who were in a complicated manner helpful for us. So
yes, that's one way to put it.
So I kept that to keep the fun going. And whenever I was moving, instead of putting it in the storage unit or keeping it in my car, I gave it to him to use until I got back. Which is funny because he said whenever he got the other one, he put it in his office at work, and it made everyone else want to go and get one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's so funny. That is funny. Just gonna move my stuff here. The great chair shortage of 2020.
Yeah.
This is the first time, Justin Clark. This is the first time I've been able to catch one. Whoa, oh, but one of the first ones in here. I can't read or write. I'm so sorry. But
Yeah.
yes, glad you could make it. Glad you could make it.
If anyone else is wondering, another disaster that happened during the moving process, I'm sure some of you will remember this. But now
I'm not liking this.
yeah,
The frame.
the frame, which costed more than the poster. Because actually, that was one of the posters Nintendo sent. And here's another one that Nintendo sent.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, back when Nintendo used to send me stuff.
Oh boy.
I have Phantom Hourglass is down in the floor. And I'm like, what a weird choice. Why not Wind Waker? Because the artwork looks the same.
Right.
But it's the games that look different. Okay, we can start. I guess we got people in here.
Yes.
Can you hear Daniel and I fine? Let us know.
Please do.
Yes or no? Can't stay and watch. Working weekend. Love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess X. I'm sorry about your keyboard, but thank you for the super chat.
Also, Commonwealth was also going to join us, but I sent him the screenshot that I sent to you and everyone else about next weekend, and he just typed back, understandable. Because Christmas trees, dude, you got to put up your Christmas tree.
It's Christmas.
Yeah.
Happy Chrysler.
My car is Chrysler. It's not very happy though.
It's not. Oh dear.
All right. Got a Twitch. I do, but I don't really use it. I got. You know how on Twitch you have to make so much money before they send you.
Right. It's like $100 before they send you your $100.
I think it's the same for YouTube. You have to like cross that line because they won't send anything that's like $50. I think I have like $70 on Twitch that's just stuck there.
Oh no.
Because you remember the one time, what was it? Dead horse?
What?
There was the username that would always gift.
Wild Horse?
Yeah, Wild Horse. What was I thinking? Dead Horse.
Yeah.
She sent the $50 on Twitch one time.
Oh my gosh, that's so generous.
And then she sent $5 on YouTube to let us know that she sent the $50 on Twitch.
Oh.
And then there's like other people that sent like $5 or $10, and so there's like $70 on there that's just impossible to get.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh no.
You can make $30 in one day. It's just everything is /𝐴𝐚𝐽𝐼𝐺𝐬. I kept it really easy for you guys. So twitch.com/ or twitch.tv/𝐴𝐚𝐽𝐼𝐺𝐬. All right, so I guess we're ready to begin.
I guess so.
We got 25 people here. I'm guessing 𝐓𝐼𝐢 couldn't make it. Yeah, she is absent for today, so it's just going to be Daniel and I doing what we do best, tearing apart bad theories.
And getting distracted.
And making
what we do best.
People who don't understand upset.
Yes. Breaking hearts, crushing dreams.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to... Wait, hold on.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we're good. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hylian Gamescast, episode 114, I think. Today, we had a special episode planned where we would be interviewing Andy, who does the voice for old and young 𝐴𝐴𝐴 in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, but that has been postponed until next week, where another guest may or may not be joining, depending on how many from the Hylian Gamescast is going to attend. So if it's just me and Daniel, there might be another special guest, but if it's 4 or more, then it'll just be us with no extra guest. And yeah. So, Daniel.
Jesse.
Why don't you go ahead and start us on the first piece of Zelda news before we get to the list.
Let's do that. So there is, you guys may all remember, because it wasn't that long ago, the Giga Leaks that happened, as they were called, the Giga Leaks. Huge amounts of game files and all this stuff got leaked out, and we got tons of new info on some old games like A Link to the Past, Zelda 64, or Ocarina of Time in its very early development, things like that. And so, yeah, just another little random piece of news that came about that is an Ocarina of Time asset that came to light here. So this article comes from NintendoLife.com, who we love, by the way. The article headline is random. At one point, the Triforce may have been collectible in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. This is kind of something we already knew, but the piece of news is not just about that. So it goes, back in the days when we first played The Legends of Zelda Ocarina of Time, there were theories going around that the Triforce, the iconic 3-part symbol of power, wisdom, and courage from the series, was actually a collectible item in the game. It's one of those gaming myths that became legend over time, etc., etc. Just in my own side note, in one of the game's earliest ever trailers, there is actually a shot of it. So that those rumors weren't unprecedented at the time. There's
Yeah,
actually
I'll have the video that he's talking about on the edited version of this.
Yeah, so it's yeah, some neat really old beta footage where it shows Link like opening a chest and then the Triforce comes out and he actually gets it here, which again it wasn't unprecedented based on the previous Zelda games that had come out at that time, all except for Link's Awakening. The other three all had featured the Triforce as something you could obtain at the end of the game usually. But anyways, it wasn't in the final game, of course, as we all know. So this piece of information, though,
really quick, turn your video off
yes,
and back on, because your audio and video is unsynced.
Boom! How about that? Is that better?
Yes. Okay.
So data miners working on this recently and illegally leaked Nintendo development, etc.'s, that's the GigaLeaks, have uncovered another nugget of information that may shed some light on this potent urban legend. As detailed by Gaming Reinvented data miner Mr. Cheese, great username by the way, on Twitter, uncovered an image in a folder that clearly shows the Triforce icon. Now, just again, a Daniel side note, the Triforce icon is on the what's it called? The item quest status subscreen of the pause menu in Ocarina of Time. It's right nestled in the middle of the aliens. So the icon, the spot on the menu for it is there, basically. But yes, the data was found close to the image. There you are. You disappeared. You disappeared. Jebby. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Okay, you're back though. Weird. It suggested that the name of the file may indicate Nintendo's intention at some point during development for the Divine Trinket to be obtainable. And it has some links to the tweets, but basically the icon that would fill that spot on the pause screen in the game was found, that file for that icon. So it's found in the game's files along with all the Sage Medallion icons that fit into those spots. The Triforce icon was found there too. So yeah, it's a neat nugget. It doesn't tell anything about where it might have been planned to appear in the game or anything like that, but that file for it to fill in that spot of the map screen is basically been recovered. And in those tweets, Mr. Cheese's tweets there, you can see he filled it in here, and you can see how it looks once it's all entered in there on that map screen there. So
yeah, like he rendered the actual file in the game to appear on the Triforce blocks. And is there more on this, or can we go into our speculation?
Right. Basically the only other real thing to note here is that all we know is that the asset for it exists. This doesn't go over anything as far as where in the game it would have appeared or how it would have been found or anything like that. Just that it does, that spot on the menu where the Triforce is, those empty slots for it, there was files to fill those spots in with the Triforce. So that's that we got. So yeah, we can get into speculation territory here.
One piece of trivia is that the Triforce actually does exist physically in the game, but it's outside of the map. So in the Royal Garden area where you talk to young Princess Zelda, and she starts talking about the Triforce and her dream and everything, and whenever you see the Triforce in the cutscene, it's already loaded onto the map when you're in the room with Zelda, but it's like 50 feet below the ground, so you can't see it. But whenever the cutscene starts, that's where it loads the Triforce from. So it's kind of interesting.
It's just there off the map to be used for the cutscene, but it does. That's because that game's cutscenes, like many Zelda games, aren't just like video files that play at a certain point, but they actually render out and act out all those cutscenes it's rendered in game basically.
Yeah.
Which is why like, if a cutscene happens and Link's in it, and he'll always have whatever equipment you have equipped. So if you're wearing a particular tunic, that's what he'll be wearing in the cutscene. Whereas if it was just a straight up video file, it would just default to whatever. And that's something like in Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition that bothers me, is that if you wear an alternate costume or have an alternate weapon, it'll just have the default ones no matter what, because that game uses just video files for its cutscenes instead of rendering them in the game. So there's a little nugget for you.
Yeah. So my theory and speculation on this is that before it became Ocarina of Time, it was, Zelda 64. And even with the title Ocarina of Time, they had it planned for like one disc on the disk drive that had everything in it. But when the disk drive stopped selling, or didn't sell as well as they thought it would, they ended up cutting a bunch of the content and trying to make it as complete of a game as they could without the extra story that they had planned out. So like a condensed version of what could have been. And then they planned on adding that stuff later on as one of the expansions for Ocarina of Time. And what a lot of people don't know is that Ocarina of Time not only had one expansion planned, but it actually had two. One ended up 𝐼𝐧𝐬 Zelda becoming Master Quest, and Zelda Gaiden ended up becoming Majora's Mask, but they were both expansions for Ocarina of Time that ended up becoming their own thing. And but originally it was 𝐼𝐧𝐬 Zelda, which added in a ton of stuff, but then they separated it into two different things, where one remixed the current dungeons and the other added in new areas and dungeons, and then they ended up just making it its own game because it became too big on its own just to be an expansion. And so like when Ocarina of Time's expansion packs ended up becoming canceled or whatever, that's how Majora's Mask came about, because they had all that stuff for like extra dungeons and everything, and they spent so much time on it that they wanted to use it, but they couldn't because no one bought the disc drive. So Miyamoto just wanted to move on to the Gamecube Zelda game, which ended up becoming Wind Waker. And that was around the time when they had that 2000 Space World demo of like Link fighting against Ganondorf.
Right. And
I'm guessing that came about because they were going to continue that art style of Ocarina of Time, but then they decided, after they released Majora's Mask, there's the quote from Miyamoto where he talked about using that art style so many times he wanted to do something completely different, and that's when one of the developers just doodled Toon Link, and they went with that. But yeah, so my thought is that in one of the planned expansions, there would have been 3 additional dungeons, and then instead of getting the medallion, you would get the Triforce. And another beta fact, the medallions, you used to be able to use them with their screenshots where it's you can equip them to the ocarina.
Right. It's interesting. I think the medallions went through a couple of different sort of phases, because there's screenshots where, like you said, you could equip them to put them in the ocarina.
Yeah, I think.
And there's also ones where they're just equipped on their own. And I think there was some files where, and I might be wrong remembering this, where you would combine it with the bow. Instead of having fire arrows as their own item, you would combine the fire medallion with your bow and arrow and get fire arrows that way.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
That's what I thought as well. And then with the ocarina, putting the medallion in the ocarina possibly would have been the thing that would have let you warp to that pad that has that medallion symbol on it. Since you're using the medallion with the ocarina, and then you warp to the pad that has the symbol of the medallion on it. So, but that's speculation. Like the medallion being
speculation-wise, I think the medallion on its own probably would have done some
like it
Like Din's Fire was
yeah,
probably what the Fire Medallion would have done on its own, that kind of thing.
yeah. And the water one, I think, isn't the water one actually ice? You get it at the water temple, but the symbol's ice.
It's an ice symbol, yeah.
So that could have been like the ice arrow and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you get the light arrows in the Temple of Time, where you also get the light medallion. So there's a connection there as well.
Mm.
And then there's weird ones, like what would the shadow medallion end up doing?
That's a good question. Kind of shadow arrows, what could that have been?
Yeah.
What could that have been like?
But just to be clear on this, all of that, like how it would be used, is speculation. But there are actual screenshots of Link using the medallions. Like there's screenshots where he has the medallions equipped in the ocarina, and there's screenshots where he just has them equipped on their own. So that's why we speculated that if you would have equipped it on its own, then like using the red medallion would have just been Din's Fire as opposed to getting it on its own.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it too, there's that area outside the entrance to the Shadow Temple, and it has the Fire Medallion symbol on the ground. But you have to use Din's Fire there to light all the torches.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, I mean, the only thing that makes sense would have been, in my mind at least, would have been for that.
Yeah.
Those spells probably got made their own item.
Yeah. So it would have been interesting to like how the concept of you need the medallion from completing the Fire Temple to go into the Shadow Temple. So it could have been their way of like making sure you didn't skip a dungeon.
Yeah, no sequence breaking for you.
Yeah, like the Shadow and Spirit Temple is reversed from the way that it possibly would have been planned, which is why on that screen the Spirit Temple is before the Shadow Temple.
Yeah. See, there's a lot of debate about that, about which is the right order to do it. I've always done Shadow and then Spirit.
Yeah.
Like water.
That's how the game guides had it as well.
And that's what Navi tells you to do, if you as well. But technically, you can do it the other way around. And some people say because of that pause screen, that that's the correct way. But I mean, Navi really does nag you to go the correct intended path, right? So in my head, that feels like the right way.
When you have to do the water temple, she's like, "There's a cold breeze coming from," and it's like, "Well, I don't have a sweater."
Shut up! I'm bow hunting.
Yeah, it's like, find me a sweater and I'll go.
I'm catching pose. I'm busy.
Yeah, he's like, I'm literally wearing a skirt and a t-shirt. Why would I go where there is ice and snow?
Because exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I guess.
But I don't think that actually, just coming back to the Triforce thing, I don't think it ever would have ever been an equippable item, even if you did get the Triforce in the game. It's probably
no, it's never been equipable in a Zelda game.
Yeah.
Because if it was equipable, then you would literally have the power of a god to do whatever you want.
You'd just win.
Yeah.
No matter what. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it would have just been in the expansion, because they still had the expansion planned after they released Ocarina of Time. So, like even so, the game released in '98, and even up until like late '99 or early 2000, they still had plans for it to release as a expansion disc. So I think that's where the Triforce could have potentially came in. Like there would have been 3 additional dungeons, or it would have changed the dungeons around to where now if you go through the remixed Spirit Temple, maybe you get the Triforce instead. Because they already had dungeons where you had to go through them twice, like the Shadow Temple and the Spirit Temple. So they could have had it to where the other 3 temples, the Fire, Water, and Forest, would have also been rearranged to where you would have to go through them as a child or adult or whatever, the same as the others. So, but that's just speculation on how I think it could have been. And then, of course, as we said in the beginning, there's always one of the first things Nintendo showed of beta Zelda 64 was Link walking into what people call the Unicorn Fountain and just opening the chest to get the Triforce. Like in Wind Waker. Because Nintendo likes to reuse unused ideas.
True.
Uh,
There's a quick question in the chat if we would want to see ROM hackers try to reimagine or recreate the Zelda expansion. I have two personal issues with that. So many times fans have tried and the projects go nowhere and they just kind of fold and collapse in on themselves and just nothing comes of it. Many better men than me have tried, that's for sure. But I think that ultimately it would all just be speculation. We don't know enough about Zelda, and also Nintendo reuses unused stuff so much that probably all that stuff got put into other games anyways.
Yeah, like Majora's Mask.
Exactly.
A lot of
so I
that
think
was...
if anyone were to successfully recreate Zelda, it would be a lot of stuff from other games, basically from later Zelda games.
Yeah. Like what was it? One of the big misconceptions is that a lot of people think that Master Quest is Zelda because in Japan, instead of being called Master Quest, it's literally called Zelda. But that's just because that was what everyone knew was going to be coming, so they just kept the same title. But there are interviews with Miyamoto and Aonuma where they talk about how Zelda would have added like new dungeons and items and everything, not just remixed it, which is why like I said, they had the one expansion planned, but it became so big that they split it into two different expansions. One ended up becoming Master Quest, which was just remixed dungeons, and the other one would have had the new additional content. And became Master Quest, and the other became Majora's Mask, because they had all that stuff ready and waiting, and instead of Aonuma being like, well, all these ideas are going to be wasted, I want to work on a new Zelda game for 64 so I can use this, and then Miyamoto was like, well, you have 1 year. And that's how they were able to do it, because it was all already there. They just had to like put it in a different world instead of Hyrule, which is kind of why I think, since they may have already had the areas made, because they said they did this in Twilight Princess as well. They had the areas already made, and they just needed a way, like an overworld, to connect them all, which is why in Twilight Princess you have all these big areas like Ordon Village and Kakariko Village, but then the path to get to them is like these tiny little narrow paths, because in that game they made all of those important areas first and then put them in different places and just tried to make Hyrule filled connect them all in a weird way, which is why there's so many crazy narrow paths. So I'm just going on and on about random Zelda facts.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. Also,
yes, go ahead.
In Twilight Princess, because I love this, Aonuma originally wanted you to start the game as a wolf instead of as a human, because while spending the night at a hotel, he woke up late for a meeting or a presentation or something and was confused, didn't know where he was, and he thought that would be a good idea to start the Zelda game. But then all of the developers were like, no.
What?
You have to explain how he becomes a wolf. So then, and they also switched the area for Ordon Village and Kakariko Village as well. So like, they would have been in different areas, which they did in Breath of the Wild with Korok Forest and the Great Plateau, right?
Kakariko Village, wasn't it?
Kakariko Village?
Because then Kakariko would have been at basically the base of, or right near Death Mountain.
Yeah.
Where it traditionally is. So
that's why they switched those areas. And then Twilight Princess 2 was cancelled so they could make Link's crossbow tree, which sold way more, like 1 million or 2 million more copies than Wind Waker did.
Every time you mention that, it breaks my heart. Yes.
So that's why that explains Skyward Sword as well. Why it's like you have these 3 major areas and then the sky just connects them. And they broke that tradition with Breath of the Wild, to where they're like, let's just make this huge world and then create the different areas inside. That way, instead of branching narrow paths to get there, you can enter from all sides. So, and that worked out extremely well. So, Daniel, I guess this is the end of this topic. Do you want to have any last words for the 52 people watching?
Yes.
56.
I just want to remind, well, nothing related to this topic, but I'm actually just going to remind the chat, though I'm quite far through the game and everything, and I've been playing it lots, and it's great. Not everybody in this chat may have finished the game or not, so let's avoid putting spoilers for Age of Calamity in the chat. Please and thank you, everybody. Just out of respect to our fellow viewers and our fellow Zelda fans who maybe haven't gotten as far or through the game as you guys have. So nothing posted in the chat has been a spoiler for me personally, but again, yeah, just... It's great if you finished it, and I'm sure there's great places to discuss that. And I think at a later date, when I think more people have had time to catch up, then we can. I think I would love to get everybody, all four of us, on to like really get into it and everything. But I know Geek says she hasn't gotten very far into the game. I'm not sure about Tubes. So, for example, so yeah, just let's just avoid any spoilers, please and thank you. I'm gonna leave it in the mods that are here. They're capable hands monitoring that. But yes, please and thank you, everybody. Just out of respect to your fellow viewers.
And before we get to the next topic, since everyone is here now, we had like 60 something people for a moment. Next week we are having the interview with the voice actor who does young and old Impa in Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity, because the old voice and the young voice are actually the same person. She was supposed to be on today, but it got rescheduled for next week. And last week we had our friend Joe, who's been on like 3 or 4 times. And then we're going to be having some other people that are related to Breath of the Wild and some that are not related to Breath of the Wild on. So be excited for special guests coming in the upcoming weeks, because since the podcast has now come back to a weekly podcast instead of like once a month like it was before, because my hand was paralyzed, for those who don't know, and now it's getting better. So and I've finally moved to a new place, so I actually have space to do stuff. So Hylian Gamescast now continues. Daniel, do you want to start out the second topic?
Yeah, sure beans.
Yeah, explain what it is for the people watching.
Okay, so you guys, we've done this before. This is nothing new. You guys like it when we get into these list articles about Zelda, particularly really bad theories and stuff like that.
Because
we kind of go through them, and
we do make our own lists. Yeah,
we do.
Some of our most popular videos is like, I think I'm really proud of this. I have one of the highest viewed, and for a while it was the highest viewed review for Breath of the Wild, which was my top 10 best and worst of Breath of the Wild. That like quickly got over 1 million views.
That's because you played the best of both worlds, or the best and worst of both.
So we continued doing different lists on like hidden details or beta stuff that was cut from the game, and a bunch of other
stuff we want to see.
Videos. Yeah. So since all of our stuff, like, we physically show on the screen what we're talking about, so no one can be like, oh, this is clickbait, or that's fake, that wasn't there. Because we literally show the interview where Alanum is like, hey, this is what was 𝐼𝐸 was going to be. And then other people are like, no, it's just Master Quest, we already got it. But then there's like the interview where Alanuma and Miyamoto's literally like, yeah, it would have added new dungeons and stuff. But then there's still people complaining, being like, no, it wouldn't have added anything except remix dungeons. It's like, well, the guy who made it says different, so...
Yeah.
And then the most common one was people saying Super Mario FX wasn't going to be a real game or something. But then there's the interview where Miyamoto was like, yeah, we tried to do it, but it wouldn't work because the Super Nintendo wasn't playable. But they actually had a working Mario and Luigi in 3D running around on the Super Nintendo. Which isn't that hard to believe because there's other 3D games on Super Nintendo.
Right. I think with the Super Mario FX thing in particular, the reason people say, oh, it was never a game is because Dylan Cuthbert, who works at Argonaut Games and was instrumental in the development of Star Fox on Super Nintendo, basically denied it and said, no, there was no Super Mario FX. It was an internal name we used for the Super FX chip, but that was it.
Yeah.
But the thing is I always, denial is there's a lot more grain of salt to take with people, game developers and stuff, denying games than there is confirmation. The game developer confirms something, the yes is a yes, basically. But if they say no, it might just mean no because I'm not allowed to talk about it, no because I signed an NDA, or no because I didn't work at that department of things and I actually didn't know about it. And there's so many variables.
The Wii
there.
U will not replace the Switch.
Vice versa.
The president of Nintendo saying that there's only going to be one Switch model, and then they released 2 more Switch models, the mini and then the revised original. And then even with the 3DS, Miyamoto, in an interview like weeks before the XL was announced, was like, no, fans don't have to worry about us releasing another model because they go out and buy this one then the next one comes out.
There's so many 3DSs now, though, so...
And it's like...
So it's...
The situation with him working at Argonaut and then developing the FX chip, the thing is, like, you have situations like that because, like, there's the Hyrule Warriors team that works on the game. There's the team that worked on that spin-off Cadence of Hyrule.
Yeah.
And then there's Monolith Soft, who's working on their own Zelda game right now. So it's like... and then there's Tantalus, who's hinted and rumored at working on a remake of another Zelda game. But it's like none of those companies are really going to know what Miyamoto or Aonuma themselves are planning privately.
Yeah. Exactly. And so for him to say no, he probably didn't... I don't think he was lying. I think he just genuinely believed that it was a no.
Yeah.
But then when he says no, it was just a codename for the chip we were using when working on Star Fox. And then Miyamoto says, well, yeah, we had this game planned and it didn't work out. And eventually it changed and evolved and everything. It's Mario 64 came to light. That just seems a lot more like, okay, well, probably Dylan there wasn't working on that game, so he didn't know that it ever existed. Not that he was dishonest.
And that's always the weird thing is, like, in the comments, like, people would say that, but then on screen you literally have the interview where Miyamoto's like, yeah, we're working on this Super Nintendo 3D Mario game, but it didn't work out. So it's like you literally have him saying it, but then there's people that's denying it, and it's so you get these lists where, like, on one that we did, someone made a list video. I won't say who because I don't want people to go and watch it because it's very horrible, but they say, like, every link is the direct son or descendant of the previous link, where that's only true in one case of Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, and then it's not his son, it's like his great-great-great-great-grandson. So it's just a really weird thing. So, like, we make these videos covering other people's lists that have everything completely wrong, or it's just so mind-blowingly horrible that you have to cringe and laugh at it. And there's also the fact that on this channel, because the lists and the videos we do, we provide the proof of everything we're saying on screen. Like, if we say something that sounds weird or ridiculous, then you can just look at the screen and you can see, like, the quote from the person who is making the game or video footage of it. So we try our best to clear up all of the misconceptions, which we have a video on going over. Daniel does the voice of it, and it goes over, like, the top 10 misconceptions of the Zelda series. And it got so long that we split it into 2 videos to where it's like 2 top 5 videos, but it covers stuff like Termina not being real and stuff in Hyrule Historia being wrong. So
yes,
go check those videos out. I'll link them in the description below. Daniel, now that we've explained.
Yes, the gist is we have high standards for when we put out lists of things, and a lot of websites do not have high standards. They'll just put out whatever. And in particular, today's list theory that we're going to be reviewing, this list, it's 14 Zelda Breath of the Wild fan theories that will change the way you play the game, in big air quotes. And I'm just going to put this out here. The guy that wrote this, Zach, I'm so sorry to pick on you, Zach, but the thing about most of these theories, he didn't write any of these. They are almost all pulled from like random Reddit threads.
Copied and pasted.
Yeah, which at least he cites his sources. I'll give him that. There's one that
we do the same thing in videos though.
There's some that are 𝐓𝐼𝐬𝐭𝐞𝐫 name spelled wrong in it.
Yeah, our friend Rick is in one of them.
Where he cited it, and literally an RMFH video. And he didn't write any of these theories, but
do your video again.
The point is that a lot of these, my video again?
Yeah, off and on.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Better. A lot of this is not good. Not Rick's video though. He's a good dude.
Yeah. So if you're familiar with the Zelda series more than just Breath of the Wild and Hyrule Warriors, then this should be funny.
Mm-hmm. And not all of the theories here are necessarily bad, by the way. We're gonna just kind of review them all and see what's good and what's not.
Your video
but
did it again.
I'm just gonna give you a heads up. Most of it's pretty bad. Oh, it doesn't. You know what it is? Every time I go into the list and then I come back to Discord, that seems to be when it desyncs itself. But here we are. Yes. So, and this comes from the website called ranker.com, so you already know it's gonna be not good. Yes. Should we jump into it then? How do you want to do this? You want to pick one each, or do you want to just take it from the top and go through all of them, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, we can start it from the top, or I guess the bottom, because that would be like the worst ones going to the best.
Because they're the most. Oh yes, because they get voted on. Mm-hmm.
And the viewers of the website, something else that makes this a bit more interesting is that if you visit the website, you're actually able to vote on the theory that you like. So this is ranked not from their thoughts, but from the Zelda community. So it'll be a little insight on how good or bad the knowledge of the Zelda community is. So the first one, Link is actually inhabited by the consciousness of the Master Sword.
Sorry, it's already bad. All right, you read it, and then I'll explain to you exactly why it's wrong.
Redditor CWS14 finds Link to be a bit cold, distant, and arguably inhuman in Breath of the Wild. What could possibly explain this? Well, maybe he's not human. This Redditor theorizes that the My thing skipped out again.
You good?
Yeah.
Discord couldn't handle how absurd this one is.
Yeah, maybe we should change to something else beside Discord in the future. Anyways, what could possibly explain this? Well, maybe he's not human. The Redditor theorizes that the consciousness within the Master Sword actually inhabits Link's body, using the resurrection process, which explains why he doesn't retain his memory, why he remains distant from Mipha and Zelda, and why Zelda keeps talking about Link's need to grow with the sword.
Okay, so here's everything wrong with this.
Does this theory change everything?
First of all, it does not change anything. Link's cold and distant because that's the personality the game writers decided to give him, is that he's a silent protagonist. The consciousness of the Master Sword being Phi can't possess Link's body because it's in the Master Sword and it talks to Link and Zelda, so it's clearly in the sword and not in his body. That doesn't make any sense. Resurrecting someone isn't a transferal of consciousness.
All you need is a fairy.
He doesn't retain his memory because of the Shrine of Resurrection. It's clearly some side effect of that. And he remains distant from Mipha and Zelda. I would say he doesn't actually remain distant from them. maybe during the events of the game, but not in the memories. And Zelda's one time mentions Link's need to grow with the sword. Literally, it was not a literal thing. Like if Link was possessed by the consciousness of the sword, it wouldn't be Link growing with the sword because they're the same thing. Then it just none of it makes any sense.
Yeah. Another thing is that him being distant from the champions in Zelda is they're all dead. Like
they're dead. That's why.
Yeah, they're
the memories
physically
is not distant from them.
They're physically not there. So literally, he has to be distant from them until the very end when you save Zelda. But with Yunobo and some of the other descendants of the champions, he's good friends with them. So and then it's the same Link in every game. He's always distant from everyone because you only get one or two travel companions during the game. In Wind Waker, you get Bird Girl, and Majora's Mask, you kind of have a connection with Anju. I don't know how to pronounce her name. Or Cafe.
Yeah, and there's your fairies in the games. And it just... Anyways,
Twilight Princess has Mipha. I think it's just this game doesn't have your companion character.
Midna? What do you mean? Did
What?
you say Mipha?
No, Midna.
You said Mipha.
No.
You said, you meant Midna. You said Mipha.
Well then, fine. Mipha.
That's okay.
Technically, Twilight Princess Link can interact with Mipha because Wolf Link is in Breath of the Wild, but it's not canon.
It's not canon.
Yeah.
And also, anyways, this was a
Isn't that weird?
This was a bad theory.
Yeah.
This gets my vote thumbs down.
Don't you think that's weird though? Aonuma in the interview had to come out and state that certain things in Breath of the Wild weren't canon. We just added it because it was fun. So some of the DLC costumes and Wolf Link being there, that's why they're optional. So anything that's DLC or optional in Breath of the Wild technically isn't canon. It's just there to be more fun. So, you want to go on to the next one?
Sure.
Number 13.
Number 13. The Shrine of Resurrection creates a new hero. So this Redditor believes the Shrine of Resurrection's name actually provides a clue to what its purpose truly is, which apparently is not resurrection, according to this theory. So that makes no sense. In addition to healing heroes, the shrine is also meant to reincarnate one, which is not the same thing as resurrection. So again, this makes no sense. The Shrine of Resurrection doesn't bring back a specific person or hero, says this Redditor. It instead resurrects the spirit of the hero, creating a new hero using the old one as a template. The theory suggests that if the shrine were simply healing Link, it wouldn't take 100 years. But perhaps reincarnation takes longer. Okay, who's to say it wouldn't take 100 years? We don't know what this technology is capable of. But also, it's clearly the same Link from 100 years before. He was placed in a Shrine of Resurrection, and then he regains his own memories. It's clearly not a new hero in Breath of the Wild from 100 years before. I feel like whoever wrote this game hadn't played the game, or whoever wrote this theory hadn't played the game, because just that it makes no freaking sense. Any thoughts to add here, Jesse?
No, it's similar to the first one that we did. It just so a theory is an educated guess. And there's nothing educated about this. Because the game tells you this is Link from 100 years ago.
Yes.
And then someone's just no, it's not.
No. This is a new Link.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Yep.
The only time I'm aware that there is a different Link is in A Link Between Worlds, where there's Old Man Link that's hinted at being a Link from A Link to the Past. And then Twilight Princess has Ocarina of Time Link. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was actually the Link in Twilight Princess originally was the Hero of Time. because they wanted to make a third Hero of Time game, but they changed it to Twilight Princess.
Yes. Jesse, we got a super chat from
Oh my
Clown
gosh.
World Review. $5 says, love your channel, and I love you guys. Gonna finish Age of Calamity now, but thanks for the great content. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you. Another great thing. Do you remember the screenshot that I sent you of that guitarist from one of my favorite bands? So, a quick story that's a bit off topic, because Daniel and I always get off topic when it's just us. 𝐓𝐿𝐼𝐼 has to be on here with her whip to get us back in topic. But I was reaching out to like tons and tons of people from the different, like the gaming industry and music and everything. And I've had a few people and some bands that I listen to that I've become friends with, because I don't know, it just happened because of YouTube. But one of them was a Skylit Drive, and I messaged the guitarist, and he was like, holy crap, I love your channel, it would be an honor to come on. And I'm like, holy crap, I love your music, it would be an honor for you to come on. So like things like that happen.
Pretty cool.
So like the clown world saying love your channel and stuff, it's like always the best thing to hear, because like the other day we had that guy on Twitter that was like, when are you guys going to start making videos again? And it's like, did you not see any of the tweets, like the stuff that I've been dealing with for the past few months?
It's too bad he doesn't think that the videos we're currently making are good.
Yeah.
that was my thought.
Yeah, like the new Zelda game released, and we literally had one of the stars from the game on the channel, and he's like, are you going to make a good video? I was like, dude, we had the guy who worked on the game on the channel. Like, what better Hyrule Warriors content would you want? Like, since we weren't talking spoilers, we just talked about all the behind-the-scenes stuff, like what he went through with recording and everything. But it's like, I don't know if it would be ignorance, but people like that, to where it's like, because I tweeted everything, and I think I posted something on the community tab for YouTube to let people know, and it's like, to make a short version, a death in the family, moving to a new place, not having a room for like a month, dealing with basically a paralyzed hand and a shortage of money from not making videos. So yeah, that's why. And then someone had like the audacity to be like, when are you guys gonna make good videos again? And it's like, did you not see that, like, yesterday we had literally the guy working on it, and then next week we're having another person who's coming on? So
also, I just want to put this out there. YouTube's not easy work, guys. It is not easy work. And anyone who thinks that they could just, oh, whatever, I could do it better, like, you're welcome to do it. Anyone can make a YouTube channel. Go for it.
Yeah, like there are the people that they'll just,
not easy work.
Like in a lot of Game Explain videos, which we also had something planned with him, but that's also now rescheduled. But with his channel and Nintendo Prime and some others, they'll have the quick videos to where it's just like random gameplay of the game, and then they talk about something, to where like that's fine when you're, because they're putting out so many videos. If they edited it the way that we did, then it would take them all day just to make the one video, so they wouldn't be able to get the content out that they need. To where when we make videos, we try every single thing that we're saying in the audio while we're talking about it, we try to have it visually represented on the screen, which is why we don't have 2-minute long gameplay footage or cutscenes. It usually cuts to something different every 8 or 10 seconds. That way, when we change what we're talking about, like we won't be talking about the Shadow Temple and Ocarina of Time while gameplay of Breath of the Wild is going on. So that's why. Yeah. A little rant.
But yeah, it's not easy work though, and again, not to bash on any of these channels, of course, because they do good stuff, they do good work. You know, it's just that, like, if you really think that YouTube is not easy work, you basically have to be a writer, director, voiceover person, editor, publicist, marketing person, all of those jobs rolled into one, and you do it either by yourself or in a very small team. And so it's it's not easy work at all. That's why my channel has such a slow output of videos, because I have all this going on as well as, you know, a day job to pay my bills and stuff. So
and another thing is, if you look at this channel, there's 4 main people on it. And used to, we did for a while, we had a new video every day, but it was like a podcast episode, and then we would have 1 or 2 real scripted videos. And the reason we would only have 1 or 2 scripted videos a week is because it took that week to make the video, as well as editing all of the other stuff.
And yeah, this is not complaining. We love doing it. That's why we do. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But nothing good is easy. So.
But that's why, like, it
it
just makes me cringe when people are like, when are you going to make videos again? Or when are you going to make good videos again? Because, like, what do you think is good? We make the theory videos, and people love them, and then they hate when the podcast goes up. But then there's people that love the podcast and hate when the theories go up. And then there's people that love both or hate both. So when someone's like, make a good video again, we're like, what video do you think is good? Because we have thousands of fans of the podcast, and we have thousands of fans of the theory videos. So, like, yeah. Anyways, continue, Daniel.
Sorry. But yes, again, we'll jump back into this.
What got us on that topic anyway?
That's a good question.
The tip, the $5 thing that was left.
Yes.
Because he said he loved the channel.
Thank you, Clown World Review.
And then I went on a rant about people not loving the channel. You want to know a crazy fact?
Sure.
While so far we've had a total of 1,311 views.
On this video?
While we've been live. So, interesting.
Cool.
All right, continue.
Humans. Okay. Number, what are we on? 12 of this list here. Breath of the Wild establishes a new 4th timeline. I'm rolling my eyes again. Another Redditor believes Breath of the Wild doesn't belong in any of the 3 established timelines. Instead, they argue that it marks the creation of a new one that takes place after Ocarina of Time. In this new timeline, Link has been cloned and put into stasis for when Hyrule needs him again. The theory goes, in this timeline, Zelda and the sages managed to stop Ganon and seal him for 1,000 years. Until he breaks free once again. Not sure where they got 1,000 from. Could be a typo from 10,000 or a typo from 100.
Yeah.
Who knows? This is why I think it's kind of a new timeline. It's an alternate adult Link timeline where Ganon didn't escape until much later, when Ganon was ready with the hero time, aka Ocarina of Time. Like, it's hinted Ocarina of Time in Ocarina of Time by Nintendo themselves, and Easter eggs in Breath of the Wild. Not sure what they're referring to there. It's proven possible by the already existing timelines as well as 4 Swords. Again, I don't think this theory was written by anyone who actually played the game. This is definitely a Link that was defeated and then put in the Shrine of Resurrection for 100 years and then comes out. Not a Link that they cloned and put in stasis until he was needed. Because if that's the case, then he would have woken up 100 years ago instead of 100 years after the Calamity strikes. So, anyways, makes no sense. That's why it's near the bottom of the list. So, any thoughts there, Jesse?
Well, how it starts out saying that it's a new timeline, that it doesn't belong in the others. Again, like these are some of the comments that we get on the videos. Where, an example that we mentioned earlier, someone will say something like this while we have the literal quote from the person who made the game on the screen saying the exact opposite. And the person's still like, no, it's a new timeline. Like the Link is dead thing is notorious for that. Or Termina only existed when Skull Kid put on the mask, is what Zelda Encyclopedia says. But then in the game itself, you can see him in Termina like weeks
before he stole the mask.
Yeah, like weeks before he even knew the mask existed. He's with those fairies running around in Termina. So like the game itself disproves what the Zelda Encyclopedia says. And even though it's in the game and you can see it, there's still people like this that are like, no, that's not true. The thing that I made up is true, not the thing that the person who made the game made up. But yeah, because there's been like 1,000 times where he said that three things 𝐿𝐴𝐼𝐽 said about the timeline was that, like, it takes place long after Ocarina of Time, and it has no direct connection to Wind Waker. Because someone was like, this game has Koroks. That means it's a sequel to Wind Waker. And he's like, no, we just used Koroks because we already had the models made from Wind Waker. So it's like, it was just easier.
It's the most Nintendo explanation for anything. They're like, yeah,
it was just faster. Because the Koroks originally were the Kokiri, but then they changed it because they had the pedestals everywhere. And in Hyrule Historia, a lot of people just skip over this and never take notice, but it has images of the original 4 champions.
And creating a champion, not Hyrule Historia.
Oh, yeah. And it has
concept art.
Yeah, the Gerudo, instead of the swords that she has, it looks like a male Gerudo with a hook shot. And then there's a Kokiri with the whip as a champion. And I'm just thinking, if the Kokiri has the whip, then what would his divine beast have been? Because it wouldn't have been.
So I don't know if
the Rito weren't. The Rito wasn't in it. No, that's what I mean.
Instead of Rito,
because that's the flying one. So then, if that got replaced by the Kokiri, what would it have been?
But the thing is, there might have been more than just 4 initially planned. Like, there's scrap divine beast concept art there as well. So
there's like the one that looks like. I forgot that movie, but it's like aliens attack and like Tom Cruise is running everywhere.
Oh, like War of the Worlds?
Yeah, like there's one concept of a divine beast or an enemy that looks like a giant thing like that with like long tentacle arms that's running around, and it has like a literal city built on top of it. Yeah. So there's really cool concept art that I hope comes back in Breath of the Wild too.
Yes, it might. But the as far as this theory goes, I feel like they started it on like an okay, this could be an interesting theory note, and then it just spirals into nonsense. They're like, oh, it might be a new timeline, and you're like, okay, how? And they're like, clones and stasis, and you're like, no, okay, you lost me there, buddy. Yeah. So, anyways, let's move on.
All right, I'll try to do the next one. 12.
Yeah, number 11.
Oh, 11. All right, my laptop's kind of far away, so I gotta make the text bigger. Breath of the Wild doesn't fit in the timeline. Hyrule Historia offers
the same theory again, or same headline for the theory.
Yeah, this is how lazy some of these websites are. Hyrule Historia offers 3 official timelines for the world. Also, in the chat, instead of looking at us reading this, would you want me to put the list on screen so you can see it and read along with us? Let me know. After Link's time travel in Ocarina of Time splits the timeline, the story goes off in 3 distinct directions. No, it goes off in 2, and Link dying goes off in the other. So that's a little misconception. In Wind Waker, Hyrule is left with no hero when Link travels back in time. In Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess, Link returns to Hyrule as a child. At least they didn't say he died in Majora's Mask. So they have that right. In The Legend of Zelda and The Adventure of Link, Link is defeated by Ganon. Is he? They make it sound like he's defeated in those games. He's not, because the whole point of The Adventure of Link is that they're trying to bring back Ganon.
They got this totally wrong. Oh no, it's just
And that timeline is created because Link is defeated.
The downfall timeline, yeah, but the way they phrased it makes it sound like in Zelda 2 that Link was defeated, but that's not. Yeah. It's just the phrasing is horrible. Come on.
Series creator Shigeru Miyamoto and producer 𝐿𝐴𝐼𝐽 claim that Breath of the Wild falls after Ocarina of Time in the overall timeline, which is what I mentioned earlier, but don't specifically specify which of the 3 plots it fits into. It can't be the Wind Waker timeline because in that game a new Hyrule is founded, yet Breath of the Wild features the Temple of Time from the old kingdom of Hyrule. That doesn't make sense either, because Temple of Time was there in Ocarina of Time when it split. So that means in all 3 timelines the Temple of Time would still be there. Because even after Hyrule is destroyed in the adult timeline, the temple is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
A new Hyrule is founded, yet Breath of the Wild features Temple of Time from the Old Kingdom. See, that it doesn't make
That's
sense.
like of all the evidence you could have pulled, that's the worst one.
Yeah.
We
YouTuber
have
Zeltic, one of our friends.
Celtic spelled wrong.
Yeah, one of our good friends, theorizes that the game must fit into the third timeline due to the Master Sword's location in the Lost Woods. See, the thing with this, I think Zeltic, RMFH, us, everyone, Zelda Master, has made videos talking about how it could fit possibly
Right.
in each of the timelines or be connected to all of the timelines. So,
It's
like,
also worth noting that the video they're referencing that Zeltic put out was pre-release. It was before Breath of the Wild came out. This article was written earlier this year. And so in that video, I've seen it. It's Zeltic's video, Breath of the Wild, the timeline dilemma and placement. He's basically saying, I don't know what timeline it's in. Here's all the evidence for each timeline, but it's impossible to say which one it's in at this point.
Yeah.
That's the gist of his video. So what this guy is saying in this article is taking Zeltic's video and the evidence in that video way all the way out of context. Like, way out of context.
So, let's see. At one point, Breath of the Wild, Zelda says, whether skybound, adrift in time, or steeped in the glowing embers of twilight, this is an obvious reference to the second timeline, but the Master Sword would have to be in the Temple of Time if that all fit together. In short, every possible timeline has a disproving element. The thing there is, like, the sword could be anywhere. Like, it just... Because at any time, someone could take it and put it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, we know Link is sort of the only one that's allowed to, like, mess with the sword, but
Mostly.
Princess Zelda always does something with it as well. Like, she's literally the one that takes it back to the Deku Tree. So, like,
Yeah.
there's, like, thousands of years that pass. And you don't know where the sword came from originally when the divine beasts were made. Like, the 1,000 years ago thing.
10,000.
Yeah. Whenever they used the divine beasts to fight Ganon. Like, we don't
True.
know where the Master Sword was taken then. So it's like, yeah, it could have been at the Temple of Time, but then they went to the Temple of Time, Link from that era, or the hero from that era, got the Master Sword, took it, beat Ganon, and then instead of putting it back in the Temple of Time, he put it in Korok Forest. So, like, that whole thing of where the Master Sword is has absolutely nothing to do with the timeline. Because we don't know what... It's 10,000 years. Look how different Twilight Princess Hyrule is from Ocarina of Time's Hyrule. And that's just like 200 or 300 years. And then look at Breath of the Wild. Like, if we went back 10,000 years from where we live in the real world, like, the pyramids of Egypt wouldn't even be built yet. And that was like 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. So it's like... That's a long time.
Yeah.
Like, 10,000 years is like longer than documented human history. So there's like so much that could have happened between then.
Wow.
So yeah, go to the next one.
Yeah, alright. The next one. The world of Breath of the Wild parallels Wind Waker. Again, I'm just like...
Wait, what are they want me to put it on screen?
Are
Are they saying yes because they agree with us, or yes because...
Hard to say.
I'll put it on
think
for this one.
for
I'll
sure.
put it on.
For sure. Alright, but yes. This theory goes, Wind Waker takes place in a Hyrule that has been completely flooded by the gods in an effort to contain Ganon, sort of. The Redditor believes that this helps explain the world of Breath of the Wild. Those same gods, Hylian, Din, Faror, and Nehru, created an alternate world, much like Lorule, to give the inhabitants of the flooded Hyrule a place to live. Fast forward 10,000 years and you reach the world of Breath of the Wild. The game's world even features advanced technology like the Sheikah Slate, which is reminiscent of the Wind Waker's Tower of Gods. In theory, this proves that there's a connection between the two worlds. So the thing is that actually what happened in the Wind Waker is that people weren't given an alternate universe to go and inhabit. They climbed, it says in the game's prologue, they climbed to the mountaintops, which became islands because the world was flooded, and they lived on those islands. That's what happened. In this theory, connecting the Tower of the Gods to the Sheikah Slate is not necessarily a bad connection, but it doesn't prove that. It just proves that they probably have similar origins. Being Sheeta, probably, more than anything else. It doesn't necessarily say that those are somehow in the same alternate universe. In fact, actually saying that it's a parallel universe would distance it from those two things from each other more than anything else. Not, but it doesn't. This theory makes no sense, guys. The more I keep looking at it and trying to reread it, the more my brain goes, no, I don't like this. It doesn't make any sense.
The next one,
so,
Breath of the Wild exists. Breath of the Wild exists at the end of the failed hero timeline. The failed hero timeline is precisely what it sounds like. It's the third possible timeline after Ocarina of Time that sees Link fall at the hands of Ganon. The game theorists break down this theory in an amazingly in-depth video. No, it's not amazing, because they leave out tons of facts.
It's so bad.
It really is. Like,
it's not.
My
mouse is disconnected.
They do a lot of hard work with their editing and videos and try to make them entertaining. But there's a bunch of videos they make, like especially when it comes to Zelda, because we just know the details and the facts from playing the games. So we see stuff and we're like, no, like you're either misinterpreting. I can't talk. My mouth is dry.
Yeah. What I miss is when they just do science stuff and they were like, how fast can Sonic run? And they like measure and like calculate the actual running speed.
Mm-hmm.
That was like, okay, that's science. That's like, okay, I get you're backing it up with math equations and actual facts. And then the theory started getting really like whack job stuff, and that's when I unsubscribed. But anyway,
they also made
no Zelda. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, even though they have this video that's like, Breath of the Wild takes place in the Downfall timeline. Here's every fact that confirms it. And then a few months later, they come out with, Breath of the Wild is in all three timelines. Here's the facts that confirm it. And it's like, okay, you got two videos stating two completely different things. Like,
yeah,
you can't, like, we on this channel try to not create misconceptions like that. Like, if we make a theory video or something, we usually stick to it as like, this is like factually what we think is going on, because in the videos of the theories we're not leaving out details to disprove it or making up stuff to prove it, like Link being a descendant of every other Link. So whenever we make videos, like, you could try to debunk it, but it's like there's so many facts in there, and then there's also the things that sort of go against it that we talk about. Like, we don't leave out stuff from other stuff. So whenever we make one, we're not saying it's 100% true, or we're always right and you're always wrong. It's just that the research we do is like, it literally includes everything, which is why we have theory videos on one topic that go for like 20 minutes, because we're literally listing everything.
Each other when we come up with theories before we even write a script or actually like publish anything. Behind the scenes, we like chat with each other and we're like, what do you think of this theory? What do you think of this? We like basically fact check each other and stuff, because
and we we also have people in our Discord, which everyone can join. There's a link in the description.
Yes.
But there's a section on it with the Zelda theory, and everyone goes in there and talks about their theory. So it's like a huge group of very knowledgeable people. Like 𝐓𝐿 Historian is one of the greatest like theorists that I know, and he doesn't really have his own channel. He just helps out all the other channels, like 𝐓𝐼𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐠, maybe �HMK, I don't know, �ZELTIC.
He's all over the place.
Yeah.
And he slides into my DMs occasionally on Twitter. I like put out that video like when we're during the Age of Calamity demo about the map, and then he's messaging me. He's like, hey, I like put this map comparison together myself, and what do you think? And like stuff like that. I'm like, oh well, how to do there, mister?
Yeah, like there'll be videos that I'll try to make, and then
You left me behind.
Yeah, my thing messed
You
up
abandoned
again.
me.
This is why we gotta like move away from Discord.
I'm crying.
But Skype did this as well, didn't it?
Did it? I don't remember. It's been a while.
No, when we had Daruk on. Remember it cut out and I had to go back to it then?
It did. That's right.
But anyways, again, to end it, we're not saying our theories are 100% right and yours are wrong. You're not allowed to make them. It's just that we do so much research that, like, on, what was it? The Zelda theory video we did about Hylia and the Dragon Break.
Yeah.
That is one of the most researched videos that I did. And I didn't even agree with the video because I had a different idea. And then Daniel explained it to me. And then I went back and did even more research and made the video. And it, like, in the video, I say, like, try your best to find something that goes against this. Like, just try your best to debunk it because it's a theory based off of everything that we see in the game. And I've sent it to, like, all the best Zelda theorists that I know, and no one is able to, like, find any holes or anything in it. So it's like...
Yeah.
But then we have... I have a crazy, weird theory about, like, Majora's Mask being... what was it?
Potato.
The sending, like, the moon to crash to Earth isn't just killing everyone. It's like that aura around the moon warps Link to that place where it's like the tree and the kids and stuff. So the theory suggests that if the aura hits the other people, it'll send them there as well. So it's not necessarily killing them, it's just like trapping them in that weird space. But that theory is like a completely out there theory that has like...
Because when the moon's coming down, it doesn't say I'm gonna smush everybody. It goes it's like I consume everything.
Yeah, which is what it does to Link. And the theory is that like Skull Kid.
So is it out there?
Skull Kid doesn't want to kill everyone. He just, because the reason he's so mad and angry is like his friends abandoned him and stuff because he played tricks on them or whatever. So like the four giants are like, go away, we don't want you anymore. And then he got angry. So it's like he doesn't want to kill everyone. He just wants them to be trapped or tortured and feel the way that they made him feel.
Right.
So that's my theory on it. Because, and it's all based around that aura around the moon that like it sucks Link in. So potentially, and Skull Kid as well, it sucks him up. So potentially, if the aura hits the other people, it'll suck them up. But if they're like outside of Clock Town, where the aura doesn't touch them, then they're just dead, like Link. If you're in like Hyrule Field, or Termina Field. So, but that's probably the most out there theory that I made. So Daniel, what's the next one?
Yes, next. I hate this next one. Sorry.
Someone actually suggested a theory something like this one at in our Zelda theory channel.
Oh, did they? Oh boy. Okay. Number 8 we're on already.
We'll try to go through all of these a bit quicker than we have. So
sure. Ganon and Vaati fuse together at some point. So GameFAQs user Thunder176 labors under the assumption. Is that the right use of the word labor? Under the assumption that Breath of the Wild rests at the end of the child timeline, directly after Four Swords, which is not correct. It's after Four Swords Adventure. Four Swords would be before
Minish
the
Cap.
timeline split.
After
Minish Cap, before Ocarina of Time, officially.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, that game features both Ganon and Vaati, an evil being that's more ancient than Zelda's main antagonist. So technically that's true. Vaati is from before Ganon existed, canonically, not in the real world. Thunder176 believes that Ganon and Vaati actually fuse into one being after the events of Four Swords Adventure, as is evidenced by Dark Beast Ganon's design, specifically black and purple and yellow coloring, which is reminiscent of Vaati's color scheme. This fusion would also explain the great leap in power that Ganon achieves when he becomes Calamity Ganon.
The power he gets is literally from the Triforce of power.
Also, this theory is mostly based on the colors black, purple, and yellow.
Mm-hmm.
No one else is allowed to have those colors now because those are Vaati's colors. I'm pretty sure that just like
what about
a lot
like
of times
isn't there the
black and purple are, like
the
used in
Oracle
series
games?
cool stuff, right?
I think
what
that
about the Oracle games?
they have their village, because in the Oracle games, if you get the code from both games, you can fight Ganon. And I don't remember the color of the person or the people that are trying to resurrect Ganon in that game, the main bosses.
Right, there's Viren
and
Onyx.
I think one of them has purple colors as well, but I'm not sure.
I think Viren does.
And then there's the design for Ganondorf in Majora's Mask, I think, or some other game where it's like vampire Ganon and he's wearing purple.
I think he's wearing like black and red. But that's I think the concept art design for Four Swords Adventure Ganondorf, but we never actually see him in game.
Yeah, he just turns into Dark Link.
Yeah, for some reason.
Or Shadow Link or something like that.
Yeah. But anyways, this one just feels like super flimsy, and they're just like, giant eyeball, and it's purple. It's got to be Vaati. And that's like, purple is a sort of recurring color in the series to mean things that are kind
even
of dark
Majora. Like, that's his whole thing.
or evil. That's true, actually.
So, like, he could have just switched it and be like, Ganondorf got Majora's Mask. That's why he's purple.
They could have been. Purple and yellow eyes. That's Majora's Mask for you. There you go. So it just also giant eyeballs are sort of a token Zelda trope as well.
They literally went back in Majora's Mask to make it obvious where to hit by putting giant eyeballs on things.
Yeah.
And then Skyward Sword had that same idea.
True. Super flimsy. That's the issue with this. It's such a reach, it's such a leap, and you land on really flimsy particle board. You couldn't even get like a plank of wood. It's like it's just no good.
All right, so this next one. Demise is the voice Zelda hears throughout the game. And let me know in the comments, does it sound like I'm like blowing into the microphone when I talk like this? Do I need like a pop filter, or is this good? Daniel.
But continue.
No, I was asking you.
Oh, I think you sound fine.
Okay. Because I'm like leaning in really close to it. So, but I don't want it to be bad. Demise is the voice Zelda hears throughout the game. Redditor, Moriak the Brass, believes the disembodied voice that speaks to Princess Zelda throughout the game, the voice of the Master Sword, belongs to Demise. The Skyward Sword big battle, Skyward Sword ends with Link defeating Demise, who becomes incorporeal, and is absorbed by the Master Sword, which traps him. Fi is the voice of the sword in that game, but Fi also says she would enter a sleep without end, meaning her voice would no longer speak to the outside world. Who then is speaking from the sword? This Redditor believes Demise is manipulating Zelda in an effort to escape the sword. So one crazy thing that they allow Fi to do is, in the game, there's when she's talking, she's like relaying a message from Hylia to Link, and she apparently can travel through time on her own, like Fi, the spirit in the sword, because she says that she spoke to Hylia at the end of time, or the edge of time, or something like that.
Right.
Like, she's giving you a message.
That Hylia was projecting the message all the way through the edge of time to Fi, who's in the current.
It could be, or it could be like her summoning Fi to the edge of time. And then, so like either way, there's some weird form of time travel there, and because of time travel logic, it's like Fi could be asleep now, but she also could have like went through all the stuff in the future and then came back. Or if she did go to sleep and rest in the sword, then like 100 years later she wakes up, just like she did in Skyward Sword.
Right.
Like in Ocarina of Time, where Majora's Mask is the first time the hero, or not the hero of time, the goddess of time is mentioned, because Zelda says, "May the goddess of time watch over you," or something like that, when Link lives. So it's like Fi could go to sleep, but goddess of time could wake her up, or she could wake up on her own at any time. And like Demise being sucked into the sword, I don't
think that means by any means that he could control the sword or that he could speak out from it.
Yeah, I think it's a version of how the Master Sword is used to seal Ganon or something like that. Like it's just a different version of using it as a seal. Like Demise as the imprisoned didn't exist in a physical form. It was trapped inside that weird block stone that was used to seal it. It didn't mean that he existed in it. It was just trapping him in another dimension or whatever. Like Ganondorf at the end of Ocarina of Time gets trapped in another dimension. So it could have been the same for Demise, because when he breaks free, like he's not coming from inside of it. Whenever he comes out, it's like stuck on his head. So it's like, I think it just makes, it's the key or something that seals him to another dimension. Like when Link shoves the Master Sword through Ganondorf's face, it like, it allows them to seal him with the power to the Sacred Realm. And then Wind Waker, when Ganondorf again gets stabbed in the face, he gets sealed in stone. So I think it's just the same with Demise, where like he gets killed and he just, it doesn't trap him in the sword, it just seals him to where he needs to be. So what are your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah, exactly what you said. And I don't know, like the sound that the sword makes and everything, like it's exactly Fi's sound and everything. Like this one just feels like such a reach. Also, the only time Zelda hears the sword speak is after Link falls, and all the sword tells is like, there's a way to save Link and to take me back to the Deku Tree. It doesn't talk to Zelda throughout the entirety of the game or through all the memories. There's only that one instance where that happens. So how could it be manipulating her throughout the entire game to escape from the sword, and then also doesn't even succeed?
Yeah, because if he could escape, then like if he could escape, the idea would be if the sword broke, the seal would break. And the sword did break, and there's no Demise.
True.
So
it just feels like such a reach. I don't know.
And technically, by his speech at the end, like he's not trapped in the sword, because when he's reincarnated as Ganondorf, or his evil possesses Ganondorf or whatever, that's, I think, yeah, like it's the same. Like when Link dies, his spirit doesn't get absorbed by anything. It's just like later on another one is born, and then they have the spirit of the first hero or whatever. So, and then like with Hylia, she didn't get trapped anywhere. She just sacrificed herself and turned into Zelda.
Yeah.
Or was born again as Zelda. So I think it's just the same thing there. Like, because if he was trapped, then when the sword broke, he would have been let free. Like, there was the seal on the what is it? The well in Kakariko Village.
Right.
And when that seal breaks, Bongo Bongo escapes.
Sure.
And then is there another example of like a seal being broken and then
That we really get to like visually see?
yeah?
Not really that I can think of. No.
But yeah, I think it's like the Sheikah have the seal on that place and then he breaks free.
Mhm.
But like that's an example. 𝐓𝐷𝐬𝐢𝐽, he's just resurrected.
Yeah, that's more of a resurrection than breaking out of a seal.
The water temple doesn't have it. The forest temple doesn't have it. Spirit temple doesn't have it. Yeah, I guess like if anyone else can think of one where a seal's broke and a boss or a bad guy comes out, let us know. Because right now I can just think of like demise from the seal weakening, and then the shadow temple.
In the chat here, Adam says, doesn't Breath of the Wild Zelda describe Fi in her dream in her journal? In that journal entry, I know the one he's referring to. If I'm recalling correct, it's unclear. She describes what basically is like an angelic figure trying to speak to her. But the way that she described it, I always thought it was Hylia, not Fi.
We got her right here. Fi.
Oh, yes. Because it kind of describes her as like, I don't know, the way that it's described. I always figured it was Hylia that was speaking to her using, because he like came to her in a dream and there was a golden light and all this stuff. Just the way, but it's unclear exactly.
Yeah, and it makes
who knows.
it does make a lot of sense that Fi is talking to Zelda, because Zelda is the reincarnation of Hylia, and Hylia created Fi. So it's like, technically Zelda herself has the power to create another Fi.
Weird. Probably doesn't know that she does though.
Yeah. Like, that's the whole point of Breath of the Wild, is like, in the memories, she doesn't know how to do anything. So she's trying to find that power. So, yeah. So this next one, Daniel.
Yes. The Sheikah provided the technology in Breath of the Wild, but traveled into the future to avoid dealing with Ganon. So this is another eye roll. So, the idea, the Sheikah in Breath of the Wild were part of the ancient civilization seen in Skyward Sword. Okay. Who traveled into the future. That's why we see so little of them in the gaps between the two games. This race mentioned in Skyward Sword, which has access to both advanced technology and time travel, sounds an awful lot like the Sheikah we hear about in the era before Breath of the Wild. Therefore, the crazy theory is that the Sheikah who built the Divine Beast and everything else 10,000 years ago were time travelers from the era of Hylia. This would explain why we see so few of them in Ocarina of Time. A large faction of them have skipped town, so to speak. So there's a couple issues with this, is that we know that the Sheikah were around for a while. Just they're the shadow folk. They're rarely seen, because they don't want to be, right? That doesn't mean they didn't exist. And the whole thing is like, they, in the history of Breath of the Wild, they built all the divine beasts and stuff, and then the monks went into the shrines and hung out there, and that's why they're like these ancient old.
Yeah, like they basically sealed themselves.
Yeah, into the shrines and stuff.
Yeah, and when the hero's spirit touches it, the seal shatters, and then the monks come back to life for like 10 seconds.
10 seconds just to give you the spirit orb, and then they dissipate into nothingness. But the thing is, like, they were around for that 10,000 years before Breath of the Wild to build all those things and then go into the shrines, and some of them were banished, some of them went into shrines, and some of them just went back to a more went to Kakariko and lived a more low-key lifestyle, basically. This is all in Creating a Champion, by the way. But some of them were just banished out of the land, and some became the Yiga clan as well. And but like, as far as the gap between Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild goes, like, this just seems like such a stretch, because there were no divine beasts or anything like that in that time. So it's possible that they had access to the technology, but that doesn't mean that the Sheikah tribe skipped 10,000 years of history.
In Skyward Sword, like, time travel is accessible by anyone because they have the stones, but those stones only take them to like certain times. It doesn't take you to the future. It takes you to the past, and like they could have gone into the past and stuff, and like created, like they could have created the robots or the technology in their time, and then when they time traveled to go back, they could have taken that technology with them and left it there when they came back to the present with the time stone, so that to everyone that didn't go back in time, they would be like, oh, all these robots, like there is an ancient village here, but really it's like current technology that was just taken to the past because of the time stones.
Yeah.
Which we actually end up doing that ourselves in that game. So like that sounds like a bizarre theory. Like they wouldn't take something back in time and leave it and change history or whatever and make it think like, oh, this always existed there. But it didn't, because they time traveled and took it there. Sounds crazy. Sounds like, oh, you're just making this up in your head. But there's a bunch of times in Skyward Sword where you have to do that yourself to take something back in time. Like the easy example is the tree. Planting the tree. And then there's like a potion or water or something that you have to take for the dragon.
Right. I don't think you time travel with that one, but...
Yeah. But there's just examples of you having to do that. So it could have been possible for the people in the current era to do that. And then to the normal people, they're just like, oh, these robots, this ancient technology, it's always existed. But really, it was just created in your time and then taken back because there's so many time stones or whatever. I forgot the name. Time shift stones.
Right. Like,
it's just insane.
And there are the gates of time, and 𝐈𝐴 is a time traveler as well, technically in that game. When past 𝐈𝐴 comes to the present day, right? Yeah. So, the thing is with this article, or this Reddit theory in the article, is like the connection between the Sheikah in those two eras is not flimsy. That's fair, but just the idea that they skipped all this history doesn't make any sense, and there's no motivation to do that. And it's not like they weren't around for the calamity 10,000 years ago, or
they leave out the civil war with the Sheikah as well, because Kakariko Village before Ocarina of Time was theoretically filled with Sheikah, like in Kakariko Village in Breath of the Wild, but in that game it talks about the civil war. Or maybe it's a Link to the Past or something. But there's the war between like the Sheikah and the royal family. And then like potentially like the Sheikah get banished or whatever, and that goes into the theory of the Twilight Realm. Since like that's where Hyrule sends really bad people. Potentially, that's where they sent...
terrible solution.
Yeah, like that. It's a theory that they retconned to... Instead of just killing all of the Sheikah, which they did, because in the game, there's like, when you're in the Shadow Temple or the bottom of the well, Navi's like talking about all this horrible stuff going on, and you're literally, like every room you go in is designed to torture people. Like there's the crosses and like the X's that has the chains on it and stuff. So it's like, Hylians, they killed people. And there's like the bones everywhere. Like, isn't there rooms that's just like made of skulls and bones?
There is, yeah.
So it's like,
that's messed up.
Yeah, the Hyrule family, or the royal family, they did kill a lot of people, but then there's also the theory that some were sent to whatever it's called, the Twilight Realm, and then in the Twilight Realm, that's why they're like sort of magical and stuff, because they're just like Sheikah that went bad or whatever, and then like instead of in Breath of the Wild, sort of the same thing happens, but instead of going to the Twilight Realm, they become the Yiga whenever they defect from the tribe. And what is it? There's also the mirror thing that you have to collect at the beach that some people think sort of looks like the Twilight Seal.
Oh, in Breath of the Wild? Yeah. It's not the Mirror of Twilight, though, but...
I hope you get to use it in Breath of the Wild, too.
We'll see.
Like maybe like it would be amazing if like that's because everyone wants a new world to explore.
Mm-hmm.
So like it would be amazing if that was the way to explore the new world, or like maybe it's a way to go back 10,000 years to when Link first fought Ganon, and then like you see Arbiter's Grounds like rebuilt and everything the way it was supposed to be instead of under the sand. So that would be amazing if you did that, because then like A Link Between Worlds or A Link to the Past and even Twilight Princess, it's the same. It's a second world, but it's changed. Ocarina of Time does it as well. So like the Twilight Realm kind of takes over Hyrule and changes some stuff. The Dark World's like a remixed version of Hyrule, Lorule, same thing. Ocarina of Time, it's the same world, but there's 7 years difference where like some things are ruined and some things are created. Like that house that took forever to build in 𝐾𝐸 Village, where the guy's just running around in a line, and it's like, you're not doing anything.
No wonder it took so long to build it.
Like, you're not being very productive.
No, he's not.
But, which is really cool in Breath of the Wild, they have the same thing to where they're building a village, but you actually see it being built.
It actually makes progress, yeah.
So, like, there are a lot of examples of this theory happening, but I don't think that they all just traveled to Breath of the Wild time.
No.
Like it. No.
Yeah.
Do the next one, Daniel.
The next one, I particularly despise this next one.
I love how I said we're going to make them all quick, and then I spent 10 minutes on that theory.
That's okay.
Because there were examples of that happening where they took something to the past or the future, and obviously Link has to do that as well.
There's time travel. It just feels like such a stretch to ignore all of the other, history. But
because going by that, it would be like they're all absent between Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild. That's why they're always absent. Like they're not there because they just went to the future.
But the thing is, they are technically around. You just don't see them.
Because it talks in, again, Ocarina of Time, where it's like, hey, there's this huge group, but now they're gone. So if they just traveled to Breath of the Wild, that group and Twilight Princess wouldn't be built. And 𝐾𝐸 Village wouldn't have been built either. Because it didn't exist in Skyward Sword.
If all the Sheikah were gone.
Yeah, and then 𝐴Zz in Twilight Princess. Living alone with all her cats.
Yes, that's the dream. But anyway. Number 5 here. All other games are dreams while Link is in stasis. So
someone posted this theory in our Discord.
I hate it.
And I'm just like, no.
I'm not sorry.
No.
The whole trope of it was all a dream is such a cop out.
I think Link,
it's the worst.
Like there are cases where Link can see events from the past or the future, kind of like Zelda does, because Ocarina of Time starts out with Link having a vision of the future.
But that's not the same as him just having some crazy dream about going on an adventure and. Yeah, so Link's Awakening is the only time the dream plot twist in Zelda was done right.
Yeah, all right, continue.
Because it wasn't Link's dream. But anyway.
Didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to mention that for the people that are watching. Because I knew someone would comment and be like, well, in Ocarina of Time, Link sees himself fighting Ganondorf and blah, blah, blah.
That's more of a premonition than anything else, right? So, yes. The Redditor Artisan Bubblegum asks an interesting question. What if all the previous Zelda games were just dreams that Breath of the Wild Link had while he was in stasis? Here's his explanation of the theory. The theory goes on, his dreams are diverging more and more from reality as he has to fill in the gaps made by his lost memories. At the divergence of the timelines, he would be far enough from reality that there could be greater differences between his recurring dreams. When he wakes up, he doesn't remember his dreams, as most people quickly forget as they wake up, making Breath of the Wild the reality that Link's adventures are tenuously based on. So first of all, how can your dreams be based on a reality that hasn't happened yet? That doesn't make sense. But also, no. There's so many references and the past games, including things that mention or reference past games as being part of Breath of the Wild's history. It doesn't make any sense for them to all have been Link's dream or whatever. It just... No. And also, again, it's a cop-out. I hate it. Terrible, terrible trope. Hate that trope. Bad. Link's no good. Or whatever. Any other thoughts, Jesse?
No.
No? Terrible, terrible trope. Hate that. you want to take number
Rope.
4? Bad.
Link's
No
green.
good.
Yeah, I was trying to post it on our Facebook page to get a few people to come. But the next one... Did you give me this one on purpose?
You're not going to like this one.
Hyrule
No, it's
Warriors
just the next one.
is now canon and explains the Breath of the Wild timeline. Redditor 𝐴855 offers a clever explanation, which I think this was... Like, a lot of people thought this when Hyrule Warriors came out. Like, oh, this explains why all the timelines are different. But then Nintendo clearly states, no, it's a spin-off, it's not canon. It's just a for fun story.
Yep.
So the use of this word shouldn't be there, but offers a clever explanation for the complicated timeline created by Breath of the Wild. Theorizing, Breath of the Wild is a direct result of the Hyrule Warriors merging every timeline. It either created a fourth timeline or simply smashed into a single timeline, one which, as of now, contains 2 games. The Redditor continues. 2? I wonder what they are. For a quick refresher, Hyrule Warriors takes place in a unified timeline created by time travel. Sia, in love with Link and jealous of Zelda, became stupid Discord.
Did you do that on purpose?
No, Discord's being stupid.
Okay, just because they disconnected, as you said, Sia.
No, I
I
think
was like, is this a really clever joke?
I think what it is like whenever I click off of Discord onto something else, it gives like 30 seconds before it goes off. So maybe Discord has to be on top the whole time. Anyways, where was I?
Right.
Because she had a great power over time to begin with and was being bolstered with dark magic, she was able to merge all time together, including alternate timelines. This caused every timeline to merge into a single unified timeline. It is in the unified timeline that the game takes place in, where Zoras and Rito are separate races, where technology was once omnipresent, and where Ganon has become a manifestation of pure evil.
So anyone who thinks that Hyrule Warriors merges all the timelines hasn't beat the game.
And
Hasn't beat Hyrule Warriors because... What?
I was going to say stop watching Game
Stop
Theorists.
watching.
Stop watching
you know what
Matt.
happens at the end of Hyrule Warriors? All the people and all the places that get combined in that timeline go back to where they came from. They all go back. All these things from Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time and Skyward Sword all merge in, and then when the game ends and the story ends, they all go back to their respective homes. They don't stay converged. So if you think that Hyrule Warriors merges the timelines, finish the game. You will see that you are wrong. So
Yeah.
I'm just putting that out there.
And there's also the fact that the creators themselves said that it wasn't canon.
Yeah.
But then they had to...
It's basically just like them needing an excuse to be able to pull all these characters from different games.
Like Cadence of Hyrule. Like, that's not canon either. And they're coming out with, supposedly, they still have the Zelda cell phone mobile game that they worked on. That's probably silently been canceled. But like, if that came out, I would expect it to also not be canon. Not just be on its own.
But yeah, it just feels like such a trash concept.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, if everyone stayed at the end of the game, sure. Then I could accept it maybe more, the theory. But like, the fact is that everybody returns to their own time, and all of that's reversed. So it doesn't make any sense for people to use Hyrule Warriors as evidence of a converged timeline. And this is coming from me, who not only believes in, but coined a term for the converged timeline. I'm the proprietor of the Dragon Break theory. It's my crowning achievement of Zelda theories.
Yeah.
So take it from me, Hyrule Warriors plays no part in the convergence of the timeline. I really genuinely believe that.
Daniel has a wonderful video on his channel yeah, it's on your channel now too, isn't it?
It is.
It was originally Zelda Informer.
Yeah. So when I was still working at Zelda Informer, I made this video theory about the Dragon Break, which everyone knows I talk it to death. But the thing is, I made that before Breath of the Wild came out, and I think it still rings true. There's nothing to debunk it per se.
Yeah.
The only time people or the only people who argue against the Dragon Break theory are like, I don't understand it, so it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's time travel.
And
Everything's messed up.
I made after the game came out, I made a continuation of Daniel's theory, because I was under the impression and believed that it took place long after Twilight Princess. And that has nothing to do with Wolflink being in the game. Everyone says, oh, well, Wolflink's in the game. It has to take place after Twilight Princess. And I'm like, no, that's not canon. They just put it in there for fun. That was probably their idea of having it be multiplayer. But then they took it out. Though. Yeah. And then they had the render from Twilight Princess HD, so they just put it in Breath of the Wild. The same way that they took the models of the Koroks and Wind Waker and put them in Breath of the Wild, because it was just easier.
But it looks so good in the cell shading in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, and they probably did the same thing with Hyrule Castle as well. They just took it, put it in, and made a few changes, so it wouldn't be identical, but it would be it'd be enough to resemble. Words are hard.
There's a resemblance. It's definitely different though, but
yeah. So there's the other thing. Oh yeah, so Daniel has if you ever hear a theorist, an article, a Zelda fan, anyone talking about Breath of the Wild being a dragon break, Daniel is the reason that they are using that word, because it was created.
I mean, it's a term from another series.
Yeah, it was created in Elder Scrolls to explain how one of the games has multiple endings, and then the game after that has all of those endings coming back together. So everything that happened, in one ending, someone dies, and in another ending, that person doesn't die. In another ending, something's destroyed. In another ending, it's not destroyed. And somehow they all come back together in the next game to where everyone remembers everything. No matter which timeline it was, it all happened, and the timelines came back together. Which we...
all really weird stuff.
𝐴𝐿𝐴NUMA has an interview where he confirms that's exactly what happens at the end of Majora's Mask, which is an example that Daniel uses. So the creator of the game says every time you go back in time, it creates a different timeline. But when you finish the game and beat Majora, all of those timelines come back together, making it so that you helped everyone. Because there's side quests where you have to let the thief steal the bomb, and then there's side quests to where you have to stop him. So at the end of Majora's Mask, both happened. There's timeline where you stopped him, there's timelines where you didn't, it all comes back together. And again, that's not a theory. Yeah. That is confirmed by the creator.
4 dungeons. Yeah, it's funny because I made that theory and someone commented and they're like, it's actually possible to do all of this in one 3-day cycle, Majora's Mask, if you're fast enough. And I'm like, no, it is not, because there's these side quests that if you do one, you cannot do the other. And also,
the Anju
maybe
Cafe
if you're
side
fast
quest.
enough, sure, you could do all the dungeons, but that seems like a stretch. I just don't feel like there's enough time. But honestly, any reasonable, your average person playing the game is not going to do all of those dungeons and do all of those side quests in one 3-day cycle. There's just not enough time. Nobody's going to do that. So I don't think that's the canon way the game goes. But,
also, in Breath of the Wild, 𝐴𝐿𝐴NUMA had an interview where actually it was a bunch of interviews, and even when announcing stuff, with Breath of the Wild 2, he said the developers took a lot of influence from Red Dead 2. During E3, when we went to E3 and they had the Breath of the Wild 2 and Link's Awakening, they what was it? Was it Miyamoto or no? 𝐴𝐿𝐴NUMA was there, and he was giving interviews saying that the developers were inspired by Red Dead Redemption 2, and then with the original Breath of the Wild, he had the same thing to where he always said the game was heavily inspired by Skyrim. And what does Skyrim have? The connection of all those timelines coming back together.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes place, just like Breath of the Wild, thousands of years after.
Yeah.
So it's like you literally have the exact same thing happening. You have 𝐴𝐼𝐼𝐼 himself saying that yes, the timelines have converged in the past in games. You also have Skyward Sword converging, because when you go back in time, it doesn't split. It just stays in the timeline. It like loops back around to itself, which is why when you plant the tree exists in your timeline when you go back to the future, instead of it
even though
being,
it was not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of examples of timelines coming back together. So
also the end of Skyward Sword as well, where you kill Demise in the present, and then you go back in time and kill him again in the past.
It's like kill him twice.
Yeah, exactly. And so that shouldn't happen technically if it weren't for a timeline convergence of sorts. So.
Yeah.
And then when you go back to the present day, everyone remembers both those things happening. It's not like it erases the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Because technically, if you kill Demise in the past, well, then none of the games should have happened, but it all still happened, right? So
right.
It's all wacky.
So, but I'll link Daniel's video. He goes over explaining it really well before the game comes out, and all of it still fits. And then I took it, and again, whenever I was playing Breath of the Wild, I was under the influence that it took place after Twilight Princess. But after playing, or after seeing and talking to Daniel, it's really a funny story. I want to tell it really quick. So It was when, at a time when I was paying other people to write scripts, like I would come up with a theory or an idea and ask them to like, so this is my idea. Can you write it out to make sense? And someone made this script. He originally made it for another channel that I don't think they make theories anymore, but I was friends and we worked together a lot, McIntyre Productions. And but he gave that channel to someone else. But this guy, he wanted to do the video for McIntyre, but then when the channel left McIntyre's possession and went to someone else, he didn't want to do it. And then there was the Chamber of Sages channel that he was wanting it to be put on, and then they gave me control of the Chamber of Sages channel, and then we tried to like reboot with HMK and everyone. We only had like one official podcast, but anyways, so it was a script that like was supposed to be for one channel, and then it went to what was my second channel, and then or the group channel for everyone, and then it went to my channel. And whenever I seen it, and he was like really proud of it, but it was like it gave the example of if you had a split timeline to where like he used breakfast as an example instead of using something from Zelda, which made me think he hadn't played any of the Zelda games, or he would have used an example from Zelda. But then again, breakfast is good, so why not?
Breakfast is good.
But he was like, if you have, so like there's 3 timelines. If there's one where you eat toast for breakfast, another where you eat cereal for breakfast, and another where you don't eat anything for breakfast, it wouldn't be possible for all of those to happen at the same time, because you either ate toast or you didn't. And that was his example, trying to be against the converging timeline. And like I was wanting one to be for the timeline, so I just like took out everything that he did and just like rewrote it myself, and I still ended up paying him for it. But that ended up becoming mine, and it uses a lot of examples and quotes, basically being the power or the magic or whatever happened that made the timelines converge was the goddess of time, which is mentioned Skyward Sword, Hylia, Ocarina of Time. No, not Ocarina of Time. Majora's Mask. has the first mention of it. So my example, I use a bunch of examples in it, but basically the person responsible for it combining was, if anyone had the power to combine timelines, it would be the person who's literally the goddess of time, that has a place to worship her called the Temple of Time. What does the Temple of Time do? Lets you travel between timelines in Ocarina of Time. And even Majora's Mask, you play the Ocarina of Time. So it's like, you have all this stuff, like the Ocarina of Time, the Pedestal of Time, the Temple of Time, the Goddess of Time. If anyone was responsible for combining the timelines, it would be her. Since in Majora's Mask, like the same thing happens, to where the timelines combine. And again, that's not a theory. That is something the creator of the game actually said. So that is 100% confirmed that all the different timelines created in Majora's Mask come back together. But
the whole toast example that you mentioned, I feel like it's just very much a not understanding of the idea of the Dragon Break theory, because the whole thing is, I mean, you can't have both not and had eaten toast. That is what a Dragon Break is that you both did and did not eat toast. Then both timelines happened and both are true. That's literally what a Dragon Break is, and it happens every time. If you play through Ocarina of Time, every time you plant a magic bean, that's a Dragon Break, because it wasn't there. And that's true. And then you went back in time and you planted it, and you go to the future, and now there's a whole plant there. But before you did that, there was no bean there.
Yeah.
So that's still true. And after
the same
you did
in
it,
Skyward
the bean
Sword
was there.
with the tree.
Exactly. And so and the tree is also a great one. There was no tree there, and Groose is standing there and thinking, this would be a good spot to plant something. You go back in time and you plant the tree there. Before you did that, Groose was standing there in the future thinking there's no tree here. And then you go back in time, or you go back to the future, I should say, and the tree is now there, it's fully grown. But before you did that, it still wasn't there. So both are still true. Both still happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that those timelines converged technically when you did that. And so it's a history rewrite, but both are still true. So Dragon Breaks, these timeline convergences, every time there's time travel in a Zelda game, they constantly happen, which is why at the end of Majora's Mask, which is the example you kept using, when the credits roll, everyone has been helped. If you get 100% on the game, everyone that you helped has been helped. Even though, if you think about it, only the people you helped during that last 3-day cycle that you just played should have been helped. But the way that the credits roll, everyone that you helped has been helped because of that timeline convergence. It all is still true. So
yeah, like the wedding shouldn't take place.
Right, unless you did the Andrew and Cafe side quest as your last one before you defeated the final boss.
Yeah, but when you defeat the final boss, it still happens.
What about the giants? Did you free all 4 giants, finish all 4 dungeons on your last, 3-day cycle before you finish the final boss? Probably not. But they still all show up. It's still all there. So it's still a convergence. Anyways, I'm still ranting. We should move on to
Yeah. So another thing that I want to say is, like, I think does Twilight Princess have an example of that? Because I know, like, you go back in time for that. Is it the Temple of Time? Or Temple of...
Yeah, the Temple of Time dungeon is, I think, the only instance of really any time travel in Twilight Princess.
And I had the theory that because you go through the same window that Navi goes through at the end of Ocarina of Time, and the Temple of Time is the doorway to the Temple of Light.
Yeah.
Which is in the Sacred Realm.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a theory that the Temple of Time, like, you enter the Temple of Time, but when you go to the actual dungeon, you're in the Temple of Light.
Which makes sense because the light medallion symbol is all over the place in that dungeon.
And then A Link Between Worlds, you're in the Sacred Realm. Doesn't it show the Chamber of Sages?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you go to that same place in a different timeline in A Link Between Worlds. But those are different timelines, though. Wind Waker, has like frozen time when you go back to the past. I don't think it reconnects.
Real time travel in Wind
And
Waker,
then
though.
it happens all the time in Oracle of Seasons and Ages because you're constantly changing the months or the years to do something, and then when you go back, it's still in that place. So those are also dragon breaks. But the only one that's confirmed dragon breaks, even though the others are confirmed by just playing the game and seeing something happen, like the tree being planted in Skyward Sword. To end it again, Daniel has a video that he made. You can go check it out for more details. And then I have a video expanding on it with more details from it. And it even has, I think I use a quote in it from someone who actually worked on Ocarina of Time. So, like, you have stuff from the game itself, from the creators, and then from like someone who actually worked on the game. So go watch it.
It's been a while since I watched that one. It's good though.
Yeah. And like every single thing that I say in the video, or technically I didn't say it because we got other people to do it, but whenever everything that people are saying in the video, that like this happened, Hylia did this or something, literally every single thing that we say is represented on screen for proof. So you can't go to it and be like, well, you say this, but it didn't happen. Or instead of this, this other thing happened, or you're wrong here. You can't do that because everything that's being said, it's like there's literally the quote from the people that made the game on the screen, or quotes from the game itself on the screen. We even used the original Japanese script instead of the English script. So it's...
This is the better way to go, really.
Which is more in line directly with what Aonuma would have said. Because like even in Wind Waker, he said that the boat talking to Link was inspired, like it was really important to him because it was inspired by him like being a new father.
Oh. So
no, it was inspired by like his relationship with his daughter, and like the Japanese version is directly written from him and very important to the game. But the English version has minor changes to it. So even though basically you get the same idea, it's still different. So like if you want to get directly from the source, then you have to get the Japanese text, which is
some continuity stuff
what we
too,
did.
Because
it mentions A Link to the Past instead of other games.
In the North American version or the English version of the game in Wind Waker, they reference Majora's Mask in one part of dialogue,
which was wrong.
And that was wrong. In the Japanese version, in the English version, he says, when the hero of time traveled to another land on a new adventure, he was separated from the elements that made him a hero, and that's why the Triforce was broken. Whereas in the Japanese version, it says that happened not when the hero of time traveled to another land, but when he was sent back in time, which, as we know, is how the game and how Ocarina of Time ends. So it actually just makes more sense, and that's the original intention of the game. So you got to pay attention to those discrepancies there.
So the English Wind Waker implies that the game takes place after Majora's Mask, where the Japanese version implies that it takes place after Ocarina of Time. But then you have interviews.
Timeline.
You have interviews before Wind Waker came out, which Daniel also uses in one of his videos, where Aonuma and Miyamoto are like before Hyrule Historia came out, and there were arguments about, it's a split timeline. No, it's a single timeline. There's interviews where Aonuma and Miyamoto specifically state the end of Ocarina of Time creates a split to where one is left with the hero, the other doesn't. One leads to Majora's Mask, and the other leads to Wind Waker. Because the interviewer said something like, is this a sequel to Majora's Mask, or when does this take place? And they say it takes place after Ocarina of Time. And the interviewer's like, so is it after or before Majora's Mask? And then he's like, no, it's after. Yeah, he's like, no, it's after Ocarina of Time because there's a split. And it's like direct confirmation, like 10 years before Hyrule Historia came out, before Wind Waker even came out, that there was a split timeline. Like, their intentions from the beginning was to create that split timeline. So, like, they could have made Wind Waker to where it took place after Majora's Mask, and be like, well, Link left Hyrule and went to Termina, so it didn't have a hero, and, like, eventually Wind Waker happened. You could use that as an example, and it fits, and makes sense, but they didn't do that. Like, they specifically made it a split timeline. So, go watch the video. I can't say enough about it. You're probably tired of me talking about it, but I love it so much. Not you, the people listening.
Oh, of course.
So we urge you to go watch his video first and then mine, because his lays out the idea of it and gives examples of it being a timeline, and then mine.
Yeah. I feel like I could have done better now that I made this video again before Breath of the Wild had come out. So, you know, I only had so much evidence to go off of, but I think everything I say still stands.
Yeah, so but basically his talks about how it's a converged timeline, where mine talks about why it's a timeline, converged timeline, and like how it happened. And again, it's all, if one person could do it out of everyone, it would be the person that they're always calling the goddess of time. Like, if the other goddesses, like, who was it? Furore created Hyrule?
Was it Din sculpted the land itself?
Okay, so Din
Furore
physically
created life on the land.
Yeah, so
and
Din
then
created
the laws of nature.
So if Din originally would have been the one who just created Hyrule, because if she made the land or the continent or whatever, and then the others just made like the grass and trees and the life and stuff, then you would imagine the goddess of time, who has examples of like speaking to people from the edge of time, whatever that means, then like you would imagine she would be the one to converge the timeline. Because when you're playing the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and you're playing the Song of Time to go back in time, technically you're not going, but like Link doesn't have that power. He's playing the song, which presumably, because Zelda teaches it to you and then tells you like, may the goddess of time watch over you or whatever. So when you're playing it, it's hinting that it's literally the goddess of time making you go back to the beginning, and like basically she's the one that keeps saving you from being wiped out. And then since that ends with the convergence, as Aonuma himself states, not a theory, that's confirmed fact. And then all the other examples of it happening, like Daniel going through Skyward Sword, then Breath of the Wild, for all of them to come together, it makes sense because it's happened before. There's examples of it. Like, yeah, it's just. Yeah. And then the thing about the toast, like, you
ate the toast.
Because it was just, like, I read it and I was like, I'm going to have to rewrite all of this. I still have the script, and I would love to make an April Fool's video with that script. Because it's with just. The toast? Yeah. Because I think I paid him like $35 just for the script. Because I felt bad.
Okay.
Because like he really wanted it.
Hope he's not watching this.
He really wanted it published on like Macintyre or Chamber of Sages or mine. And I was like, well, since I own the Chamber of Sages channel now, you can just like give me the script and I'll pay you and make a video out of it. He gave it to me, and then I made the video after I like rewrote the script. And I was like, he wanted a script on the channel so bad, but I ended up having to rewrite it. So it's like it kind of got published. But like, imagine that if you're a fan of these channels and you get a chance to work on a video, but then all of your ideas are changed.
Oh.
So it's like, so I felt bad, and instead of giving him like the $20 or whatever, I ended up giving him like $35 because I just felt bad. But it ended up being not the most popular video on the channel, but one of the best, because again, I'm always urging people just try your best to debunk it. Watch it, and then comment if anything's wrong. And no one has been able to do it. There's been some people that's tried to point out stuff, and I'm like, no, if you watch the video at this 3 minutes and 10 seconds, it goes over that. So like it's more like people don't pay attention to parts of the video, and then when it ends, they're like, oh, he didn't say this. This disproves it. And then I'm like, no,
Right.
go rewatch this part. You can see the quote where it says blah blah blah. So go watch the videos. I'm going to force us to move on because we've been on that for 15 minutes. That whole section will probably be a video itself.
All right,
cover the next
here.
one. Is everyone in the chat just like, Jesse needs to shut up?
No, not at all. They're just talking Zelda theories. Number 3 here, Hyrule forgot about the Triforce. This is the least cringe one. This is probably the better one of all these ones here. So this, they literally just slapped a link to 𝐅𝐸𝐻's video. Our friend Rick, they're just like, just watch Rick's video. Here's the gist of it though. But basically the idea of it is that the Triforce has kind of, just watch Rick's video, become a forgotten relic over time. There's not that much talking about the Triforce in Breath of the Wild. And the idea is that Zelda's inner power that she's inherited are tied to the Triforce itself because of that, which is why we see the symbol on her hand there. So that's basically their whole thing. Again, this is probably the only one I don't cringe at in all of these. Because not just because Rick's my friend, but also but it also feels like lazy journalism. Yeah, he's a good dude, but literally they're just like, just slap that video, slap someone else's video in here. That's our theory number 3 in this list. So, yes, that's that. But I'll read it here. Actually, I didn't actually read it. It says, 𝐅𝐸𝐻's theory is over 6 minutes long.
Over 6 minutes.
Here's an abbreviated explanation. The theory relies on the assumption that Breath of the Wild takes place in the distant future. Not an assumption.
Yeah, that's not a theory.
Just the game. Thanks.
That's another thing where 𝐴𝐿_NUMA is like, Majora's Mask has converged timelines. It's the same thing where 𝐴𝐿_NUMA is like, yeah, it takes place 10,000 years in the future.
Yeah.
10,100 years.
There we go. So yes, it goes. Considering so much time has passed, 𝐅𝐸𝐻 asserts that the people of Hyrule forgot about the existence of the Triforce, in part because the royal family worked to have allegedly struck from the record. Breath of the Wild speaks of Zelda's inner powers constantly, powers which are reminiscent of the Triforce, but the Triforce itself is rarely mentioned. 𝐅𝐸𝐻 believes the royal line and thus Zelda are imbued with the power of the Triforce, so it technically still exists within the princess. I don't fully agree with the theory, but at least they try to get a good one for this list here instead of some random Reddit post. Yes, Jesse, thoughts?
Like, I think so Breath of the Wild, Zelda in the memories is trying to unlock her power.
Yeah.
And she has the power, like she is basically just literally Hylia. So while she's going through trying to unlock her power, Hylia is technically created by the 3 goddesses to watch over and protect the Triforce. So if the Triforce disappears to where it's not physically in a place, like how it's sealed and saved in the Sacred Realm for protection, like if it's not physically in a place, or like Wind Waker where you have to find the pieces of it, then it's like physically a part of Zelda, I guess, if that makes sense. Which we kind of see it with Ganondorf and Link and Zelda, to where it like appears on their hand. So like the Triforce physically isn't there, but they have the power of the Triforce in them. So I think it's the same with Zelda and Breath of the Wild. So her going around trying to unlock her power as Hylia at the same time would unlock her power to use the Triforce, which we end up seeing when she holds up her hand and like uses it against Ganon. It's not one Triforce showing, it's the full Triforce. So I think maybe over that 10,000 years, they could have sort of forgot about the Triforce, or since it's connected with Hylia and Zelda being the reincarnation of Hylia, maybe they think it's kind of the same thing. Like if she unlocks her power as Hylia, then she also unlocks the power of the Triforce. So instead of just trying to look for the Triforce, they're looking for a way to unlock her power. So they kind of combined the concept of using the Triforce and using the power of this god as the same thing. So instead of saying in the game we're looking for the Triforce, maybe they just think it's the same thing. Like over time, the two different things just became one, since it was Hylia's job to protect the Triforce. So that's my idea of what could have happened. What do you think? Is that bad?
No, I agree. No, I agree. I mean, it's, again, this is the one where I feel like this is one of the only entries on this list where they were actually a good theory. And again, like in the game, the Triforce isn't really talked about at all. So
Link doesn't have the Triforce on him during the game.
No.
And then also, Link in Breath of the Wild doesn't have the power of the Triforce.
Doesn't seem so.
But his journey is to basically prove or get the power of the spirit of the hero or whatever, like the spirit orbs. Like, is that like a physical manifestation of the hero's spirit or whatever?
I don't know.
Because in Wind Waker, that's another game where Link doesn't get the Triforce. He has to do all of this stuff to prove himself to the gods to get the Triforce. Like, he physically has to get the Triforce. And not just get the pieces of the Triforce, he has to, like, do all these dungeons and stuff to prove that he earns it. Whereas in Ocarina of Time, he's just got it. Yeah. After after Ganondorf touches it, it just breaks off and he gets it.
Yeah, basically.
Twilight Princess, he already has it.
Since the beginning, at the beginning of the game, he has it.
Ordonia gives it to him, or is it at the very, very beginning?
Not before that, just at the very beginning of the game. It's not even really mentioned or touched on very much throughout the game at all or anything. Just the whole time, it's just there. He has it.
Yeah. So in Breath of the Wild, I think it's the same thing as the Ocarina of Time, when Link, like, the Triforce isn't like, they don't have a chunk of it in their pocket or like their bag of holding, but like it's physically in them or metaphysically. I don't know. Which is why Ganondorf in those games, he's not trying to look for pieces of the Triforce. He's trying to kidnap and kill Zelda and Link.
Right.
To get those...
To extract it from him, basically.
Yeah. So
also, we have a super chat.
Oh, nice.
Nintendo Prime Nate.
Are they telling us to shut up?
Nope, just sending love.
Oh, thank you.
Sending us love. Watching this on mute as my kids go to sleep. I need this podcast in my veins.
Who said that?
that was Nate. Nintendo Prime.
Love you, Nate.
Yes.
Also, I don't know if I've spoken to you, but if you've ever seen the posts about my hand being paralyzed, I can do that now. To where before I couldn't even move my fingers. Which is why the podcast is continuing, because a couple of months of grieving, getting over the pain, moving to a new place, it was hell. But we're back.
Good.
And Chiblima is not here to keep us in line.
Righto. But yeah, I feel like as well with the thing is with Zelda, in all three parts of the Triforce seem to be lit up, whereas in other games it's only the one piece that they have that is lit up. So yeah.
So
but let's carry on, shall we?
Yeah. But before the Nate thing, I wanted to finish what I was saying to where, like,
oh yes, sorry.
Those links have the Triforce in them, not physically like a thing you can hold, but it's just in them, like the spirit orbs. When Link gets it, It's inside him. And I think in Breath of the Wild, instead of the Triforce physically being somewhere, like in Skyward Sword, at the end of the game, you see the Triforce physically, like all three pieces together. And Wind Waker, the king uses the Triforce, it's physically together. In Wind Waker, you find the pieces of it, and Link has to prove himself to get it, or whatever. And instead of the Triforce being split up to where like 3 different people have each piece, and Breath of the Wild, I think it's just more she has all of it inside her, but she doesn't know how to access it because she doesn't have the spirit unlocked yet. So that's my idea. That the reason you don't find the Triforce anywhere in Breath of the Wild is because Zelda has it, but she doesn't know how to really use it until like that last attempt at Ganon, which oddly enough in Age of Calamity is what causes the baby egg to wake up and go through time. So
yeah.
As someone who's not beat the game,
wacky, but
as someone who's not beat Age of Calamity, is it the robot itself that causes the portal, or is it Zelda using the Triforce?
The baby egg that opens the portal. They play a little song and then the portal opens, right?
Yeah. Is it the Song of Time?
It's different. It's its own song. It's Age of Calamity's main theme song, actually. But
they should have used the Song of Time.
There's other parts later in the game. I don't want to spoil it for you, Jesse, but that support that it's
headphones off.
The support that it's baby egg when later in the game other things happen. You're good. I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's if when you get farther in the game, you'll know that you'll realize it's definitely that little baby guardian's own powers that it's basically confirmed that caused that time travel stuff. So yes, but number two, shall we? Yes.
My turn.
This one is not even really a theory. But yes, go ahead.
So this is an example of people will be like, I have a theory that the Koroks used to be Kokiri. And it's like, no, that's not a theory. Like the game tells you this.
It's just something that happened in
or
the game.
Like I have a theory. Like all of the theory lists you go to, like this one's all about Breath of the Wild, but if you go to any that's just general Zelda, there's always like Link is dead in Majora's Mask, or Majora's Mask was always a dream, or the Rito used to be the Zora, and that they evolved into the Zora. And it's like, no, that's not a theory. Like, it's like the game itself proves Termina has just existed because Skull Kid goes there long before Link even knows Termina exists, and long before he gets the mask. And then after the power leaves the mask, Termina still exists. It doesn't disappear like in Link's Awakening. Like it's still physically there. So it's not a dream. It's not made up from Skull Kid's mind. It is a physical place. And like the game tells you this. Just like in Wind Waker, the game literally tells you the Koroks evolved from the Kokiri and the Rito evolved from the Zora. But all these lists have these on there as theories. And it's like, no, like this isn't even a theory. This is just like, I don't know, a misconception. What would you call it? Because
it's just a thing that happens in the game. It's not even.
It's not a theory. It's a fact.
It's just something that happens. Yeah.
So this is about a character who we've had on the channel 3 times.
Something like that. Yeah, that sounds right.
3 times. Yeah, we've had Sean on here 3 different times, and honestly, I disliked Rivali when he first came out. I always made fun of him, calling him Ravioli, as everyone with the stupid brain did. So, because he was always the jerk. But then as I got further in the story, you get to see, like, he's not just a jerk the whole time. Like, he actually has character development. to where you're supposed to not like him at first. And then you understand him, and that, like, he takes pride in basically being a champion and, like, being the best at what he does. And he sees Link, and he's like, this guy can't do anything. But then Link proves himself to him. So, which is, in a real life, if this was going on, I think we would do the same thing, to where it's like, if you're the best at what you do, and there's only 3 people that's also joining your team, or 4 people, you're going to want the other person to prove that they're worth being there. That way it's not just like some random stranger that can't do anything and going to get you killed.
Right.
So, end of the world's coming. Ganon's coming back to life. Robots have turned evil that were meant to protect you. I understand why Revali is a jerk to Link. Because he sees this Goron that has, like, superhuman strength and can roll really fast.
Yeah, but by the same token, you see Link, who has literally, like, the sword, like this legendary sword that you have to be a chosen hero to be able to wield, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I always felt like Revali's attitude came more from a place of his own insecurity than anything else.
Did we ever ask Sean about this?
I think he brought it up. He talked a bit about what the article says here, actually.
Yeah. All right. So Revali is a jerk. Wait, so were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
So after this, go watch any of our interviews with Sean. They were really great. One of them I wasn't on, so it was better than the others.
No.
It was before Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity released, so Sean wasn't legally allowed to say that he was doing the voice in the game, even though it's obvious. Like when Breath of the Wild 2 comes out, it's going to be the same thing, to where it's like, they're in the game, but...
Yeah, they can't say it technically, but...
Yeah, so this goes on. Anyone who's played Breath of the Wild knows that Ravioli, the hero who represents the Rito people, is not the nicest guy. He's outrageously condescending to everyone, especially Link, and his arrogance is off-putting. Is his, the one guy that teaches you how to, like, you have to prove yourself to shoot those targets? Is he rude to Link, or is he nice?
I would say he's standoffish, but he's not, like, rude or anything like that. I don't know.
Which is also voiced by Sean.
Yes.
Fun fact, I think all of the descendants, aside from Mipha, are voiced by the same person.
I think so.
So, however, Redditor DiddyDubs believes there's a simple explanation for his attitude. Basically, every other hero and or champion, Link, Zelda, Mipha, this is saying what I was saying.
Yeah.
Sidon and Daruk is born into their role, but there is no evidence to suggest... Are they?
Did they say Sidon?
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Like, they're born into... No?
No. Well, first of all, Sidon is not one of the champions.
Link...
And second of all, Link and Daruk both wouldn't qualify in that respect either.
Yeah, like, they're not royal.
They're not royalty.
Like, Mipha was. Sidon is.
Mipha and Urbosa is the Gerudo chief, so, like, sure.
Link is just a normal knight that became really good. That's why he got chosen. He didn't even get chosen to be a champion at first. He was just Zelda's bodyguard, right?
Yeah.
And because he was the bodyguard, he just automatically got the thing. And then Daruk, like, he's not like Darunia.
Yeah, no, he's not like the chief. He's just the Goron's sort of hero character.
Yeah,
right?
so this is a thing where, like, they just get their facts wrong, and they're like, I have this theory.
They had the right idea, even though they were, like, not a theory. Revali. But yes, the thing is, I think with Revali is that like, there's sort of some of this is kind of true, because Daruk has an innate ability, a supernatural ability that sets him apart as a champion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is Daruk's protection and whatever, and Zelda's the princess, and Urbosa and Mipha are also, like, royalty for their respective tribes. And he, as Rivali as a character, had to invent his ability. He had to work hard and create it, and he had to train constantly to hone his skills.
Mm-hmm.
And if they had phrased it that way, this article would be way better.
Hyrule Warriors ruined something for me, to where like what you were talking about, like they each had these abilities that were their own. And
Right.
I always had the idea in theory, and other people did too, but that Link's ability is when he like slows down time, which is what, like in the backstory, him being really good at battling
Right.
the other knights and guards. Like to me, it's like, yeah,
Now
he's a
everyone
good
can flurry rush.
yeah, like he's a good swordsman and everything, but he also has that ability to where he can just slow down time and then attack for a few seconds. Because Link
Right.
has always had something to do with time in almost every single Zelda game.
PS2, yeah, is that the Champion's Ballad, the journal entries hint towards that, where Daruk, in one of his journals, talks about a conversation he had with Link, where it said when Link feels like when he focuses hard on a battle, that it feels like time slows down.
Yeah.
That's sort of a throwaway line in that journal, but plays a huge part to explaining things like the flurry rush and Link's bullet time bow archery ability.
There was
Which It's
two.
still in Age of Calamity. When you use the bow in midair, it just doesn't slow down from the player's perspective, but I think it still does for Link because he still shoots like
Yeah.
really fast.
So-
And so it, yeah,
There was not Lord of the Rings. It was like a game in the Lord of the Rings universe.
okay,
The second one, and they stole that idea because it came out like maybe a year after Breath of the Wild, and in the
okay.
game, like the trailer for the game had him like jumping off of something and everything going in slow motion as he shot the bow, and I'm
Right.
like, this was heavily inspired by Zelda. So anyways, is born into their role, which they're not. This is why Daniel and I try to do these sometimes. We used to do it more, but there's all these
Mhm.
articles giving misinformation, or in this case, just lies.
Yeah.
Well, no, I would say this is misinformation, to where some of it is true, like Mipha and Sidon and Zelda, but the others
Well, the
aren't.
fact that they put Sidon here is
Yeah.
is-
Who's not even a
Yeah.
champion.
yeah.
But then there's the other articles or videos that just have complete made up lies about like nothing is correct. Like the one where Link, every descendant of Link, or every version of Link is a descendant of the other. And it's like, that's only in one game. Where like Twilight Princess Link is, yeah. So like,
Yep.
we do this because that information comes out, and people who may have just gotten into the series reads it or watches it and believes it as fact, which is how you got millions of people believing Link died in Majora's Mask, when if he did, Twilight Princess just wouldn't happen. So like, it's just so stupid where like the game itself proves the theory wrong. So technically it's not even a theory, it's just your made up, horrible, disproven fan fiction. So there's articles like that, which are just complete lies and lunacy. And then there's articles like this, where it just has a bit of misinformation. And that's why we do these. Because it's fun to make fun of them. The Champion's Ballad DLC depicts Well, first... Okay, so that could be misunderstood, saying that it's fun to make fun of these. But I don't think it's rude. I think it's just like, if you're working for a very notable website and you're getting paid to make these lists or this article, and these websites pay really well, like double what you would be making at like minimum wage if you're like working at like a good website. Like one of our friends got hired to work at GameExplain, and
Right.
they all do really well, but they're putting out facts and truths, where these websites are just like copying stuff from Reddit and then posting it, and then they're still getting paid from it. And it's like, if you're getting paid to do something, at least do your own research. So
That's too much work, though.
yeah, like if Daniel and I, if we made our website and we posted articles, it would be stuff that's like how this, it just has an image of Rivali on it
Yeah.
above the article, which is just like a standard thing, like, oh, I'm talking about Rivali, I'm going to put a picture there. But
Makes sense.
then he talks about like all of these people being champions and stuff. And it's like, if we did this in a video or an article, we would have the images of exactly what was being said, or proof of who was royal and who wasn't, and
Right.
state like Sidon was born from this person, and Daruk was like not born from the chief, and Link was just the son of a knight or something like that. Like, we would go through those examples and prove it as fact with like details and quotes from the actual game or the creators, where this just has an image of Rivali and then spits out nonsense about Link, Zelda, and everyone being royal. And it's like, no, like, do your research. Anyways, they're born into the role, but there's no evidence to suggest that Rivali is of noble stock within the Rito people hierarchy. There's no proof of Link and the others either, but you still say it. The Champion's Ballad DLC depicts Rivali working diligently to become a hero, whereas the others acquire their talents naturally, so the hero grows to resent the more privileged characters. And that's not true either. Like,
No, it's really just Link that he
Link,
seems to really dislike.
yeah, and Zelda.
He's like kind of standoffish to everyone else, but he's really just out for Link.
Yeah.
Really.
And the article says they all get their talents naturally, but it's like Zelda, the whole point of every single cutscene in Breath of the Wild is her trying to get her power.
Yeah.
So, no, like, that doesn't come naturally at all. Like, Ocarina of Time, Zelda may have had it, but she trained with Impa, so Impa could have taught her how to do that. But then, like, you have other Zeldas that seem like they naturally have the gift. Like, Skyward Sword Zelda doesn't know that she has it, but then she ends up being able to use it as soon as, like, she's basically told by young Impa. And, yeah. So it's like, the whole point of the game is Zelda not knowing how to use her power.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally the point of all of the cutscenes, that she doesn't have it and she's trying to get it. And this article is stating that she and everyone else just gets it naturally. And it's like, it's more misconception. So the hero grows to resent the more privileged characters. And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. The whole thing is like they this is one of the other ones too. They started out on a good point, like, oh, this is why Rivali is the way he is, whatever. And it's like, yeah, okay. And then as soon as the writer started going into details about it, you're like, no, stop! You spiraled out of control.
Yeah. So Daniel, do this last one, and I apologize for ranting on everything, but
it's okay.
It's even in normal conversations I do this, to where, like, if we're discussing Zelda and someone mentions something that's wrong, then I don't try to correct them on the spot, being like, no, you're completely wrong, this is what happens. I just say, like, oh, well, did you know that, like, in Ocarina of Time, blah, blah, blah. So, like, I just bring up something about what they were saying to where they can be like, oh, I misunderstood that, or whatever.
But
and it's less like me being like, no, you're wrong, this is what happened. So I try to do it in a nice way. But Daniel, finish us off with the number one theory.
Is all three timelines merge in Breath of the Wild. So, again, we talked about the Dragon Break stuff, my own personal theory. But here's what this article has to say about that. Since the Zelda timeline is such a mess, it's not that messy, guys. Theories exist that place Breath of the Wild in each of the franchise's three timelines. Cutting through that, This Redditor has a neat solution. What if all 3 timelines merge into one for Breath of the Wild? Part of the claim is based on the fact that the game apparently references all of the timelines. This is true, but the argument is considered more nuanced than that. You see, since the 3 timelines will be merging, probably because of a wish made on the Triforce, there's no evidence to support that.
Wait, Daniel.
We'd have... Yes.
Before you continue,
Yes.
this sources random guy from Reddit.
Yes. They could have sourced a better source.
Who was the very first person in the Zelda community? All of it. YouTube, Reddit, Zelda Informer, Dungeon, Zelda Universe,
Probably
IGN.
not the first to have thought of the theory.
Not thought of it.
But,
who was the first to put it out?
But it was I would say that was mine.
And then when other people started making videos or articles about the same thing and using the term Dragon Break, where did they get that idea?
Oh. That was from my video.
Okay.
But
so Ranker should have sourced the original source, which is what you're supposed to do. But they sourced random guy on Reddit.
Random Reddit person. Yes. Since the 3 timelines merging, again, they say probably wish on the Triforce. Here's the thing about the Dragon Break, is it's not something that I think any mortal person willfully would have decided to do, because I don't think anyone that exists in one timeline knows that there are other timelines.
Yeah.
Because people in universe don't have the meta knowledge that we as the player do, right?
Yeah. Which is why in my theory, it suggests like
a goddess.
Who's literally the god of time.
So, but whenever people ask me about this, they're like, "Do you think it was this character merged the timelines back together? That Link went, it did this?" And I'm like, "No. Why would they? Why would they think it's even a possibility, or that there's, like, do you think, like, no?"
They would have no idea that. Yeah, they would have no idea that another timeline exists. Like, someone might have the idea, like how we have the idea, like, oh, there might be
the only person with
a parallel universe
of
where
that in fiction is 𝐲𝐷 in Community, but that's
the dice roll.
The dice roll episode, exactly. But anyways,
the dark timeline.
That Triforce, no. We'd have a very interesting problem on our hands.
Maybe that's how the timeline split.
3 copies of the hero spirit, Ganon and Zelda. Of course, Ganon would try to find a way to become more powerful through this. Again, he would probably not know about it. And that it would be up to a new Link and the 3 hero spirits to defeat him, but not before Ganon completely shreds his immortality and becomes Calamity Ganon. This, in my opinion, would also somewhat explain why Zelda in Breath of the Wild had such a hard time being able to use her abilities in the past. She'd most likely to have burnt out her power sometime in the past, possibly to help stop Calamity Ganon the first time. That doesn't make sense to me if you're saying that this timeline convergence amplifies Ganon's power, but nullifies Zelda's power. That doesn't make any sense to me. But also,
and it wouldn't.
Again, I think this is just something that happened, not by any one mortal character's intention or correction. I think it was just some temporal event that caused it, like a thunderstorm.
Yeah.
You don't blame the thunderstorm on the weatherman.
On
guys,
Urbosa.
Except for Urbosa, maybe.
Yeah. So
in real life,
my thought is like, how would it make like one Ganon, but then make 3 Links? Like, there would have to be 3 Links alive at that same time in the different timeline. Like, there's ideas that Wind Waker and Twilight Princess take place close to the same time, but on different timelines.
idea about Wind Waker and Twilight Princess is
Jeez. I hate this.
That they both are about 100 years after Ocarina of Time in their respective timelines.
Am I back?
So
yeah,
you are back.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
With this theory is, again, I like the theory. I kind of invented, well, maybe not invented the theory, but I kind of am.
You were the first to put it out.
The Dragon Break guy, but what they're talking about, their argument for it, is all wrong. The theory is right. The argument is all wrong.
Yeah.
So
go watch Daniel's video again, linked below, and then mine will be linked below it. Because I think I tried to cover everything Daniel did, and then add, like, not just what happened, but why or how it happened. Like the event that caused it, which again would be, if anyone
Also,
could do it,
everyone's
it would be
asking
Hylia.
in the chat if 𝐴𝐽𝐻𝐼 ever confirmed the merged timelines.
No.
Yes and no. Not in any particular interview. He did not ever say, this is the timeline, it's a convergence, whatever. All he ever said about the timeline is it before or after Ocarina of Time? After. But where the sort of confirmation is in play, it's actually
official
been
Zelda
removed
website.
now. Yeah, the official Zelda website placed Breath of the Wild. Yeah, they had a timeline page on their website, on Nintendo's official Legend of Zelda website, and they put Breath of the Wild at the end of all 3 timelines.
Yeah, like it had
There.
the split going down, and then they all came back together at Breath of the
Yeah.
Wild.
So
like that is
never in any interview did 𝐴𝐽𝐻𝐼 say it, but that's, an official source technically,
yeah.
right?
And then saying that it happens after Ocarina of Time is also a key, because like Twilight
Yeah.
Princess,
He didn't say directly after.
Yeah.
He just said after.
Twilight Princess came like the remake Twilight Princess HD was announced during a trailer for Breath of the Wild during a Nintendo Direct. Do you remember that? Where like,
Yeah.
and it was the same thing they did with Wind Waker, to where when they the first thing they said about Zelda Wii U was the same time they also announced and showed off images of Wind Waker HD. And they did the same thing with Breath of the Wild, where they showed off a short cutscene of Breath of the Wild, and then they had Twilight Princess HD for the first time announced alongside it. And since Twilight Princess had just came out, and that takes place after Ocarina of Time, I think there's a reason that 𝐴𝐽𝐻𝐼 didn't say Breath of the Wild takes place long after Twilight Princess, which he could have done, because just saying that possibly would have sold more copies of Twilight Princess. Because people would get the idea, well, I need to play Twilight Princess to get like more information about Breath of the Wild. So like he could have said that and it led to sales, or he could have said it about Wind Waker and it led to sales there, but he said it about Ocarina of Time, which wasn't playable on the Wii U or the Switch. Well, it was playable on the Wii U, but not the 3D remake. And so it's like, there's A Link to the Past, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess. They're all in different timelines, and they're all really popular Zelda games at the top of everyone's list. So he could have named one of those, but he didn't.
Right.
He named the game that splits all of it. And then there was one interview where he said playing Breath of the Wild will remind you a lot of Twilight Princess. And I think that was
there
more
will be some aha moments.
Yeah, I think that was just more of like, Arbiter's Grounds, Wolf-Link as like non-canon DLC. There's a thing that looks like the mirror of Twilight, and then but then there's also things like reminds you of Ocarina of Time and all the other those Zelda games. So it's just weird. Like why would there be 3 Links and just one Ganon?
It doesn't make any sense. No.
And then, like, in Wind Waker, Ganon's dead. Like, he's turned to stone. Twilight Princess, I think he officially dies in Twilight Princess. Because it's not just Link and Zelda stopping him, like, the Divine Beast, or what are they called? Are they Divine Beasts? Guardians?
Which ones now?
Divine Guardians, like Ordonia and... Like they're named after the gods.
Yeah, they're just the spirits. What are they called? They're at the Spirit Springs. That's the right place.
Are they guardians?
No, I don't think so.
No, and the guards that you have to play that puzzle with are guardians, aren't they?
Right. I don't remember the exact term though that they use, but
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
God, we sound horrible, don't we? Like.
Yes.
It's one of the main things in Twilight Princess, and we're like, God, I don't know. What's the name? We would lose Jeopardy.
Oh, no.
So, like, those things come out, and they have a part in, like, stopping or sealing Ganon. And then later on in that timeline, Ganon comes back, but it's a new Ganon. It's not the Ganondorf from like Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time. It's a second Ganondorf that has nothing to do with the old Ganondorf. But that Ganondorf doesn't show up again.
Right.
And then, yeah, so like, if he did come back and he got like the power of all three Ganons, then it would have to be like, how would he do it? Like, when would Ganondorf be able to do that? Because he got killed in Twilight Princess, he got sealed in Wind Waker, and A Link to the Past, like even in the sequel later on in A Link Between Worlds, like it's not that Ganon that comes back. It's just someone using the using the power of Ganon. So like,
he kind of gets merged with A Link to the Past Ganon somehow.
Yeah.
But
so it's yeah, it's like there wouldn't have been a time for Ganondorf to do that, because if he did, like if Twilight Princess Ganondorf did this, then you wouldn't have the ending of Twilight Princess, because he would have to do it at a point where all three versions of himself was alive. Yeah. But he didn't, because we've seen all of them die. And it's like, the one time Ganondorf did physically get the Triforce, it just broke into different pieces and he wasn't able to use it. So it's like, potentially the same thing would have happened in Wind Waker if the king hadn't got there first and Ganondorf touched it. Because isn't it like it breaks if like the person has an evil heart or something like that? Yeah,
if their heart is out of balance. But
and then he gets stabbed in the face.
It could be that. Well, there is that too. Yeah, but I'm out of time, Jesse. I think we gotta wrap this up for the day here.
Yeah,
we did make it through this whole list though. It was bad. I'm sorry.
It really, like, if we went through a list where everything was correct, sort of like when we went to RMFH's, like we just like, okay, yeah, that sounds about right, and then we moved on. But then like we get to stuff like this and it's like, no, we have to explain all of it. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Daniel,
thank you.
They've been watching your face for
some reason,
for so long. How long has it been? It doesn't say. Oh well, we've been here for like 2-3 hours almost. Really? That's insane.
Yeah, just about.
Wow.
See.
And we got 2,647 people that have tuned in, and 36 are continuing to watch. 40 now. So Daniel.
Yes. How
does it feel that almost 3,000 people tuned in to hear you just horribly talking about these theories?
I'm sorry, guys.
All right. So to end it,
subject you to this.
Let everyone know what your favorite Zelda theory is, and tell them where they can find more of your stuff. You don't have to go into detail. Just say what it is. It's the good guy Ganon, isn't it?
No, not that one. Probably one of my favorites. A really random. It's a nugget of a theory. Really, it's a micro theory, and I have a video on my channel where Jesse's actually in about 10 sort of micro Zelda theories, but particularly about Fi and how she communicates with Link throughout the different games, and that we actually see Fi in Ocarina of Time. So you just have to go find that video on my channel if you're like, when? That doesn't make sense. That's probably one of my favorites, though.
Yeah. So everything is at Capt Bergerson, right?
Everything is Capt Bergerson. Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, especially YouTube and Twitch. Capt Bergerson.
You do live streams of
I do
a lot of games. They can see you playing Hyrule Warriors.
Yes. We've been playing through Age of Calamity Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific time. So come hang out. It's a fun time. It's
live on YouTube and Twitch, and then it's re-uploaded to YouTube. So if you miss it, you can still go and watch and catch up on all of the inside jokes that are made. It's hilarious. There's a lot of great people there in the community. Sometimes there's theory or Breath of the Wild 2 discussions going on as well as he plays the game. And on my side, everything's just at 𝐴𝐻𝐸𝐿𝐺𝐿𝐺𝐿𝐺. The podcast has been off of iTunes for a couple of months while I've been trying to find a new place and dealing with everything. But starting probably later today or tomorrow, the podcast will be back on iTunes, because there was a bunch of people that were listening through iTunes, and I want to put it back up there for those people, because there's like 40 or 50 people that were just regularly downloading every episode, which made me feel awesome. So yeah, everyone, check that out. Next week we should have 𝐓𝐻𝐸𝐿𝐺𝐬 and the Geek Apprentice on here, but
a
special guest last week, you can go watch the episodes, we had Joe, who voices Daruk. Next week we are going to be having Andy, who voices the old and the young 𝐴𝐻𝐸𝐵. So that'll be really great. And if Tubes and Geek can't make it and it's just Daniel and I, then we're going to have another special guest. Maybe someone who likes to explain games, or someone who lives in a common realm. So
you're so vague.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said on when Joey got hired, and he's like, I got a new job, and I was like, interesting, because Game Explain just said they were, or whenever I was DMing him, he was like talking about hiring new people, and then Joey says that, and I'm like, it's at a place that explains games, isn't it? And then he DM'd me, he was like, how did you know? Who told you? And I'm like, no one, you just made it obvious. So Patricia Somerset, a long time ago, she said she would come back on to discuss her album that she released, because she's a singer, musician, but we never ended up having her on. But she always just responds, and she's always nice and responds when I try to talk to her. But the last time her schedule was busy, but I could try again. We've had Joe, we've had Joe Sean on a lot. We had, who else?
Joe, Sean, Patricia. That's all.
Yeah, Patricia.
As far as Breath of the Wild cast we've had, that's it so far.
I'm in, I guess I can say it, I'm in conversation with Mifa, and we have 𝐴𝐻𝐸𝐵 scheduled.
Yes.
So if you want amazing videos with the people that are literally in the game, then check it out next week. Probably same time this one started, Sunday, 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific. And join the Discord to put your questions in the chat that you would like asked. So if you want 𝐴𝐻𝐸𝐵 to answer some of your questions, that's how you get it done. You can become a Patreon to make sure your question is at the top of the list. And yeah, with that, Daniel, I am so sorry for keeping you for so long, even after you said that you were running out of time. I continued talking, answering questions from the chat, but since we didn't have a mailbag, your questions next week will be answered by someone who's actually in the game. Bye, everyone. Have a great time.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Love you all.